Chapter 54. Because it was very close, Qin carried the little girl to the temple of the marquis. But after looking at the entrance for a long time, she was not interested at all, so Qin could only bring her to the brocade next door. In fact, there was nothing in the brocade that could attract a child's attention, so before the little girl was even halfway through, she was already clamoring to go to the amusement park. Regarding this, Qin did not have any objections, so he took her to a taxi and went straight to Happy Valley. Once they entered Happy Valley, when the little girl saw the huge toy castle at the entrance, she immediately became excited. Because she was not even 1.2 meters tall, she did not even need to buy a ticket. But the price was, she could not play most of the rides. She only found out after coming here that most of the rides in Happy Valley required children to be at least 1.2 meters tall to play. The roller coaster looked exciting and fun, but it was not a ride that children could play. With no other choice, she could only hold her and stand by the side, watching the others play. It was not that there were no children's rides, such as the merry-go-round, small train, sightseeing wheel, crazy bus, and so on were very popular with children. It was just that the little girl wanted to ride the roller coaster, so Qin had no choice but to coax and trick her to play all the children's rides. Finally, the little girl put down her pouting little mouth. Qin originally thought that the little girl would not like Happy Valley, but when they came to a place called the Magic Castle, the little girl immediately exploded with curiosity. There were countless dynamic and strange magic rides gathered here. Every arrangement was deliberately to cater to the child's whims. The Magic Theater stood in the middle, shining with a dreamy light. In the theater, cartoon dolls appeared one after another, opening the curtains of the magic ball. Magicians skillfully cast magic, happy wooden horses galloped and chased each other. On the bubble ball battlefield, colorful balls jumped around. There was also a big Mexican straw hat, wildly dancing with magic, releasing brilliant lights. When had the little girl ever seen such a dreamy magic world? So she was immediately addicted. When she really started playing, time passed very quickly. In the blink of an eye, it was 5:00 in the afternoon. Qin calculated the time and estimated that it would take at least an hour to go back during the rush hour, so he carried the little fellow and prepared to leave. However, she was unwilling no matter what he said. Qin persuaded her in every way possible and bought her a big panda plushie. Only then did the little girl reluctantly say goodbye to the magic castle with the plushie in her arms. "Papa, when can I come to the amusement park again? This place is much more fun than the zoo." "When you're a little taller, when you're a year older, Daddy will bring you here. By then, you can also play those games." "Really?" "Of course, why would I lie to you? Then I want to ride the roller coaster." "The roller coaster won't work, why?" "You have to grow even taller to ride a roller coaster, Papa is lying." When the father and daughter returned to Wuho Temple Street, it was almost 6:00 in the evening. During this time, Aunt Zhang also called twice to urge them. Naturally, they had to eat hot pot in Chengdu. After all these years of training by Aunt Zhang, the little girl could eat a little spicy, so Aunt Zhang ordered a slightly spicy Mandarin duck pot. It seemed that every hot pot restaurant's business was very good. From afar, they could see more than 10 plastic stools at the door. 20 to 30 customers were sitting there waiting in line for their number to be called. The smell of the hot pot was very strong. Before the little girl entered the door, she had already begun to sniff her little nose and kept looking around. She seemed to be very interested in this thing. She had never eaten hot pot before. When Qin carried her into the hot pot restaurant, Aunt Zhang's family had already ordered the dishes and were waiting for them in their seats. However, Qin did not immediately go over. Because he felt that the atmosphere at Aunt Zhang's table was a little strange. Kai Shuqin held her phone with both hands and typed quickly. She seemed to be chatting on WeChat. Xia Pinglin lowered his head slightly and kept whispering something in Kai Shuqin's ear. Aunt Zhang looked at the hot pot in front of her silently. There was a baby carriage next to it. The baby was lying in the carriage obediently and chewing her fingers. Looking at his posture, it was obvious that something unpleasant must have happened before he came. Qin deliberately stood at the door for a minute. After a deep sigh, he carried Nyan and walked in. "You're back. Come, come, come. The pot is boiling. You can eat at any time." The moment Aunt Zhang saw Chen Shi, she immediately put on a smile and quickly got up to ask him to sit down. Chen Shi nodded at Aunt Zhang, then turned to Xia Pinglin and said, "Sorry for making you wait." Hearing that, Xia Pinglin forced a smile and responded, "It's okay, it's okay. Sit down. I don't know if you like these dishes. I'll show you the menu, okay?" After saying that, Xia Pinglin turned sideways and was about to ask the waiter to bring the menu over. However, at that moment, Kai Shuqin secretly kicked him under the table. Xia Pinglin was not a shrewd person, so it immediately showed on his face. Therefore, he could only turn sideways a little awkwardly. He wanted to say something, but it was as if someone had suddenly grabbed his throat. Aunt Zhang did not seem to notice this. At that moment, Chen Shi stood up and gently pressed Xia Pinglin's hand down. He then said with a smile, "You don't have to be so polite. The child and I are not used to Sichuan cuisine, let alone hot pot. We'll just taste it." "Oh, okay." Xia Pinglin nodded a little embarrassedly. Chen Shi smiled at him politely, but Xia Pinglin immediately looked away. It seemed like he did not dare to look at Chen Shi. Seeing this, Chen Shi could only let out a long sigh in her heart. Dinner started in such a strange atmosphere. During that time, Kai Shuqin did not say a word. Her face was so dark that it could drip water. Aunt Zhang also seemed to have something on her mind. When she chatted with Chen Shi, she always smiled very reluctantly. Chen Shi saw all of this with her own eyes. After everyone was almost done eating, Chen Shi used the excuse of going to the toilet and secretly wanted to pay the bill. However, his actions were noticed by Aunt Zhang. Aunt Zhang immediately rushed over and pushed Chen Shi to the side. Chen Shi did not dare to push Aunt Zhang. He could only wait by the side obediently and said helplessly, "Aunt Zhang, it's just a meal. Do you have to be so polite with me? Nonsense. Not even a bowl of noodles." Aunt Zhang's attitude was very firm. She could not afford to offend her, she could not afford to offend her. Chen Shi smiled bitterly and shook his head. When they paid the bill and returned to their seats, Aunt Zhang suddenly realized that Kai Shuqin had actually brought the child home without even saying goodbye. "The child is hungry." Shuqin went back to feed the child first. "Let's go too," Xia Pinglin explained with a dry smile. However, Aunt Zhang was so angry that her face turned red. For the sake of face, Aunt Zhang did not immediately flare up, but her face was terrifyingly gloomy. After leaving the hot pot restaurant, Chen Shi once again mentioned that he wanted to go to the hotel. However, Aunt Zhang was in a fit of anger, so she did not say a word and pulled him into the house. The little girl also saw that something was wrong, so she quietly said in Chen Shi's ear, "Grandma is unhappy. Papa has to be obedient." Hearing that, Chen Shi smiled helplessly and then touched the tip of the little girl's nose with the tip of his nose. He decided that he would take the little girl to Leshan to see the Buddha statue tomorrow. He could not stay in Chengdu and cause trouble for Aunt Zhang. In fact, Chen Shi knew very well that Xia Pinglin and his wife were so poor that they could not afford a meal. Obviously, that was not the case. Their family was not poor. Instead, they had a small savings and were ready to buy a house. The reason why Kai Shuqin had such an attitude was mainly because Aunt Zhang had been in Zhonghai for several years and did not take out a penny when she came back. They were all family. Kai Shuqin was Aunt Zhang's daughter-in-law, so there were some things that could not be said directly. However, this did not mean that she would not express her dissatisfaction in other ways. The appearance of Chen Shi just happened to give her a chance to act. Chapter 55. The next day. Kai Shuqin didn't even eat breakfast before she left the house. Xia Pinglin, Aunt Zhang, Chen Shi, and the little girl sat at the table and ate silently. No one said anything. Even the little guy, who always liked to make a ruckus when eating, was now as well behaved as a kitten. Chen Shi coughed softly, which finally broke the silence. Aunt Zhang, I'm going to take Ninian to Leshan to see the Buddha today, so we won't come back tonight. While speaking, Chen Shi also touched the little girl's little head. The little girl immediately nodded like a chick pecking at rice. While chewing, she said in a muffled voice, I want to see the Buddha. Hearing this, Aunt Zhang could only nod and say, then pay attention to safety when you go there. There are many people in the scenic area. Don't let her run around. Well, don't worry. Soon, breakfast was over, and Xia Pinglin was ready to go to work. But at this time, Chen Shi suddenly stopped him. Brother Xia, let's add each other on WeChat. I'm new here and unfamiliar with the place. If I can't find the place, I'll have to ask you. Oh, okay. Xia Pinglin nodded. Then, without suspecting anything, he took out his phone and added Chen Shi. Later, Xia Pinglin went to work, and Chen Shi sat with Aunt Zhang for a while. When it was about 10 o'clock, Chen Shi carried the little guy and said goodbye to Auntie Zhang. They were just going to play for 2 days, not to go back to Zhonghai, so the little girl was not so clingy. Out of the door, Chen Shi bought a travel bag at the store next door and then walked into the bank next door. Then, he sent a WeChat message to Xia Pinglin and asked for Xia Pinglin's work location. Although Xia Pinglin was a little confused, he still returned the location to Chen Shi. His work location was also in the first ring, but it was in the north of the city, so Chen Shi took a taxi and arrived at the door of his unit after half an hour of traffic. Xia Pinglin thought that Chen Shi was looking for him for something urgent, so he ran out in a hurry. But when he came out, Chen Shi didn't say anything. Instead, he directly handed the big travel bag to him. Xia Pinglin reached out and weighed it. He found that the bag was quite heavy. When Chen Shi released his grip, he immediately staggered. This bag was at least 40 to 50 kilograms, and he couldn't hold it with one hand, so he quickly stretched out his other hand and used a lot of strength to barely hold the travel bag in his arms. What's in it? Hearing this, Chen Shi smiled but didn't say anything. Instead, he gestured for him to open it. Xia Pinglin put the bag on the ground and unzipped it. But the moment he pulled it open, his whole body trembled, and then he quickly covered the mouth of the bag. Where did so much money come from? It was bright red and full of cash. Stacks after stacks, 10,000 a stack. The new version of the yuan was 155 millimeters long, 77 millimeters wide, and 0.1 millimeters thick. If the banknotes were brand new, then 1 million on the ground would form a cuboid 31 centimeters long, 38.5 centimeters wide, and 10 centimeters tall. This volume was almost half the size of a common desktop computer CPU. Of course, if there were old banknotes, then the actual volume of 1 million would be bigger. There's 1,800,000 in cash here. It's a gift to you. So, I suggest that you take a leave of absence and deposit the money into your bank account now. Xia Pinglin was stunned. The expression on his face was very exaggerated. He just opened his mouth and stared at Chen Shi blankly. Chen Shi reached out and patted him on the shoulder. Xia Pinglin suddenly felt like he had been electrocuted. His body trembled, and he quickly said, "No. I can't take your money." As he spoke, he wanted to zip up and return the travel bag to Chen Shi. Hearing this, Chen Shi smiled, like a devil who was leading people to fall into hell. He whispered, "Don't you want to buy a house? Think about your wife. If your wife knew about this, do you think she would divorce you?" Xia Pinglin was stunned again. After hesitating for a moment, he quickly said, "No. Absolutely not. Although our family is poor, we will never take other people's money for no reason." Speaking of this, Xia Pinglin's movements were much firmer. So, he zipped up, stood up, and looked at Chen Shi bravely. At this time, there was no hesitation in his eyes. Instead, there was a trace of inexplicable anger. Maybe he felt that he was insulted by Chen Shi's money? Chen Shi looked at him a few times. Suddenly, he shook his head and smiled. Then, He patted the little girl's back and asked, "Nyan Nyan, Uncle doesn't want our money. What should we do?" The little girl had been greeted in advance by Chen Shi before she came, so she immediately said in a childish voice, "This is Grandma's money." "It's not our money. Grandma doesn't want the money. Papa has no choice, so I can only give it to you." It seemed that Xia Pinglin was stunned by the 1.8 million yuan that suddenly fell from the sky. His whole nerve reaction was much slower. Seeing this, Chen Shi could only pat him on the shoulder again and said earnestly, "You are a good son and a good husband. I know some of your family's affairs. Every family has its own difficulties. As long as it's a family matter, there is no absolute right or wrong, because you are always a family, but there is something I hope you can tell your wife. I hope she doesn't have any prejudice against Aunt Zhang. She has been away for a few years, but she didn't bring back a penny, mainly because I was not at home these years. Without Aunt Zhang, Nyan Nyan would not have been able to live peacefully and happily to this day. Aunt Zhang is a good person. She can even take care of Nyan Nyan, a child who has no blood relationship with her and has no employment relationship with her, let alone her own daughter-in-law and granddaughter. You are Aunt Zhang's son, and I think Aunt Zhang is half a mother to me. So I want to tell you that the money on the ground is not everything. I owe her too much, and I will slowly pay it back in the future. You know your mother's character. If I give this money to her directly, she will definitely not accept it. She will even help me save it in case I have no one to rely on in the future. The reason why I spent so much effort to convert all this money into cash is not to show off, but because I hope you can take this money home. In the process of her asking you to deposit the money in the bank and transfer it to me, you can persuade her to accept this money with a clear conscience. You are a man, the head of the family. Do you understand what I mean?" As soon as Chen Shi's voice fell, Xia Pinglin suddenly squatted on the ground and cried loudly. On one side was his mother, and on the other side was his wife who gave birth to his child. No matter how poor her conditions were, she always complained all day, but she never left him. If both of them fell into the water at the same time, who should he save? This was a big problem in the world. When faced with this problem, if he easily made the decision to choose one side and give up the other, then he would be truly childish, hopelessly childish. There was nothing that could not be adjusted between family members. Chapter 56. Chen Shi accompanied Xia Pinglin back to the residential area, but they did not enter the house. Xia Pinglin held the travel bag tightly in his arms, turning back to look at Chen Shi every 3 steps. After walking less than 10 meters, he finally couldn't help but put down his bag, and then bowed deeply to Chen Shi. Chen Shi could only smile helplessly and said to the little girl, "Goodbye, Uncle. We're going to see the Buddha." "Goodbye, Uncle." The little girl waved her little hand vigorously. Then, Chen Shi turned around and walked out with her. He did not dare to see Aunt Zhang now. He could not afford to offend her, but he could hide from her. Thinking of this, Chen Shi turned his phone to airplane mode. However, after thinking about it, he turned off the airplane mode and blacklisted Aunt Zhang alone. After this delay, it was already 3:00 in the afternoon when Chen Shi and the little girl arrived at Leshan by bus. They did not have to climb the mountain to see the Buddha. Therefore, when the little girl heard that they could see the Buddha by boat, she immediately clamored to take the boat. They had been on the plane, and now they were finally going to take the boat. There were many tourists here. Because the place was relatively small, it was crowded and lively. It would take about 20 minutes to visit the Buddha by boat, and they would stop in front of the Buddha for 5 minutes. The Leshan Buddha was tall. It was 71 meters tall, the largest stone Buddha statue in the world. The Buddha statue was chiseled from the cliff of one peak of Lingyun Mountain. It was a sitting Maitreya Buddha with a cassock hanging under the double collar, hands on knees, and feet on lotus flowers. The Buddha statue was 98 meters tall, with a head height of 10 meters, an eye width of 3 meters, a nose length of 6 meters, a mouth width of 3 meters, ears length of 7 meters, neck height of 3 meters, shoulder width of 28 meters, body width of 8. 3 meters, middle finger length of 8. 3 meters, and feet length of 9 meters. There were 1,021 spiral buns on the head, each the size of a round table. 2 people could stand on each ear, and each foot could accommodate more than 100 people. Speaking of the Buddha, there was a legend that had to be mentioned. Legend has it that in the early years of the Tang dynasty, there was a Lingyun temple on Lingyun Mountain. There was an old monk in the Lingyun temple whose Buddhist name was Hai Tong. At the foot of Lingyun Mountain was the confluence of Min River, Qingyi River, and Dadu River. Here, the water was turbulent and the waves were turbulent. They often swallowed the boats and harmed the people. Monk Hai Tong saw that Sanjiang's water was so rampant, he guessed that there must be water monsters causing trouble in the water. In order to quell the flood and prevent the passing ships from being harmed, Monk Hai Tong mobilized the local people to gather manpower and material resources to start building such a large Zhenjiang Buddha. Such a huge Buddha statue naturally couldn't be built in a short period of time. Therefore, when Hai Tong passed away, the Buddha statue only reached the shoulder. Later, after the joint efforts of 3 generations of craftsmen, it took a total of 90 years before the Buddha statue was finally completed. Chen Shi sat on the boat with the little fellow in his arms. He felt that this place where the 3 rivers converged was a bit interesting. Obtaining water was the best, hiding wind was the second best. Using water to prove the dragon, using water as the boundary. The mountains followed the rivers, and the mountains resided in the water boundary. The water flows with the mountain, and the mountain is waterproof. When one enters a game, one must first look at the water before seeing the mountain. There must be a mountain between the 2 waters. When the water meets, the dragon stops. When the water meets, the dragon stops. When the water flies away, the qi disperses. When the water melts, the internal qi gathers. What a great place where the 3 rivers converged. What a great Zhenjiang Buddha. This monk Hai Tong really did have some skills. However, when Chen Shi saw that the plank road next to the Buddha statue was full of tourists, he couldn't help but sigh. In fact, it was true. The Buddha statue had been sitting here for more than 1,000 years. During this period, it had experienced many storms and witnessed many changes of dynasties. Even if there were mysteries in it, they would have been destroyed completely in the long river of history. What a pity, Chen Shi was sighing with emotion about the ruthlessness of time, but the little fellow didn't care so much. The closer the boat was to the Buddha statue, the more excited she became. The Buddha statue in front of them was getting bigger and bigger. The little fellow raised her small head and kept patting Chen Shi's shoulder, indicating that he should look quickly. Papa, look! Look! The little fellow wanted to describe the Buddha statue, but after holding it in for a long time, she still couldn't think of a suitable description. So she could only sit in Chen Shi's arms excitedly and move around, constantly shouting, "The Buddha statue is so big, so big." She had no choice. Her vocabulary was too small, and the Buddha statue obviously couldn't be described as beautiful. So except for big, the little fellow really couldn't think of any words to describe it. As a scenic spot, if they didn't climb the mountain, the Buddha statue would be finished in a while. So when Chen Shi got off the boat with the little fellow, he found that it was still very early. After checking with his mobile phone, he realized that in the hearts of the people of Sichuan, the snacks in Leshan were the real attraction. Traveling, it was always necessary to try the famous local snacks. Speaking of snacks, the first thing to mention was the tofu pudding. The tofu pudding here had little to do with sweetness and saltiness. It was more spicy. So when a bowl of Leshan tofu pudding was served, it was not black or white, but red. Since the little fellow ate the hot pot, it seemed that her ability to eat spicy food had been completely developed. After a bowl of tofu pudding, she didn't even burp. Holding the small plastic bowl, she shouted at the auntie who sold the tofu pudding for another bowl. Seeing her cute appearance, the auntie immediately said to Chen Shi happily, "You are such a good girl. You are blessed." Before Chen Shi could reply, the little fellow smiled sweetly and said, "Thank you, auntie." Looking at her, she was not shy at all, which made the auntie laugh loudly. Even the money for the second bowl of tofu pudding was waived. Well, he wanted to take her to steamed beef and spicy hot pot, but she was full only from the tofu pudding. The little fellow was easy to feed, and since she was not interested in food, so he took her directly to Mount Immerse. There was an old saying, the clouds were green, and the silhouette was beautiful. It was like a moth's eyebrows, thin and long, beautiful and gorgeous, so it was named Mount Immerse. She used to be a hardcore fan of Mr. Jin Yong, so he had been looking forward to Mount Immerse for a long time. From the Buddha to Mount Immerse, it was only a distance of more than 40 kilometers. After arriving at Mount Immerse, she checked the guide and found that it would take at least 11 hours to walk around Mount Immerse, and the most beautiful scenery of Mount Immerse was Enchanting, sunrise, sea of clouds, Buddha's light, and holy lamps. Unfortunately, the mountain was too big, so if he wanted to see the sunrise, he had to live on the mountain. There were many tourists here, so she naturally couldn't run as fast as he could, so he had to check all the hotels in Jinding, only to find that the rooms were already full. He had no choice but to look at the hotels at the foot of the mountain again, and prepared to take the little fellow up the mountain tomorrow. Since he said that he would take the little fellow to be extravagant, she naturally would not be soft-hearted, so he quickly chose a luxurious hot spring villa that cost more than 5,000 yuan a night. In the villa area of the 5-star hotel, there was a detached small courtyard of more than 200 square meters. Walking into the courtyard, one could see the artificial hot spring in the courtyard. Although it was an artificial hot spring, it was exquisite and elegant. It looked antique and charming, which made she very satisfied. As soon as the little fellow stepped into the courtyard, she was immediately attracted by the hot spring. Papa, I want to soak in the hot spring. Soak in the hot spring. She excitedly dragged Shi to the hot spring, and couldn't wait to jump in immediately. Good girl, go into the room and change your swimsuit first, and then you can go into the water, okay? She pulled her and didn't let her run around. But the little fellow didn't listen. She dragged Shi's hand and fell down at a 45-degree angle, as if she wanted to drag Shi forward with her weight. Good girl, don't make trouble. The hot spring water hasn't been heated yet. Change your clothes first. Seeing this, she had to pick up the little fellow and tickle her twice, which made her giggle. Finally, she stopped complaining about soaking in the hot spring. The night was beautiful, and the small courtyard was melodious. Although it was not the Mid-Autumn Festival yet, a cold full moon had been hanging in the sky, sprinkling a silver light on the ground. The father and daughter changed into swimsuits. The little fellow was wearing a pink one-piece swimsuit, and she was wearing a small bath cap on her head, which looked very cute. She stretched out her feet to feel the water temperature and found that the temperature was a little high, so she could only slowly put her feet in the water, then her legs and waist. After getting used to it, the little fellow completely put herself in the hot spring with white steam rising. Only her small head was exposed, and her smiling face was blooming like a flower. She soaked for a while and seemed to get used to the temperature of the water, but suddenly stood up from the water. When she was wondering what she wanted to do, he saw that she began to scoop water with both hands and splashed it on herself again and again. Seeing this, she naturally did not want to be outdone and immediately scooped water to fight back. The father and daughter had a water fight in the hot spring. In the quiet courtyard like a paradise, the little fellow's giggles suddenly sounded. She was busy playing with the little fellow, so he didn't notice that his mobile phone in the bedroom suddenly vibrated. It was a WeChat message from Aunt Zhang. There were only 3 words. Chapter 57. It was nighttime. Soaking in the hot spring was very physically exhausting. The little girl was still young, and she was restless when soaking in the hot spring. She was constantly active, so her physical energy consumption was huge. In less than 10 minutes, the little girl was already exhausted. Her whole face was red, like a ripe apple. It's so comfortable. The little girl let out a kind of silly moan. She folded the towel several times and put it under her head. Then she leaned her head against the edge of the pool and just lay in the water. She was speechless when she saw such a careless action. He waited for a while, but found that the little girl had fallen asleep just like that. Children should not soak in the hot spring for too long, because children's skin was more delicate and their ability to regulate their body temperature was weaker. The temperature of the hot spring was generally higher, so it would cause the blood vessels in the human body to expand, allowing more blood to flow to the body and gradually reduce the blood flow to the brain, slowly causing the brain to have insufficient blood supply. This would undoubtedly cause a certain amount of damage to the child's brain cell development, so it was best for children to not soak in the hot spring for more than 15 minutes. The little girl was sleeping very soundly. She carried her into the bedroom, then wiped her body and changed her clothes. Even such a big movement was not able to wake her up. One could imagine how tired the little fellow was. After covering the little girl with a quilt, She lay next to her. After all, this was the best room in a 5-star hotel, so even she could feel very comfortable. Mount Immerse was a 5A scenic spot with little industrial pollution. The density of the spiritual energy here was much higher than in Zhonghai. She silently felt for a moment, and then, for the first time, he assumed the posture of 5 hearts facing the sky and began to concentrate on meditation. After an unknown amount of time, Shi suddenly opened his eyes. Then, he got out of bed and went outside the room, looking in a direction. That direction was the location of Mount Immerse. He stood in the courtyard, looked in the direction of Mount Immerse, and then looked at the little girl in the room. After hesitating for a while, Shi suppressed the curiosity in his heart and decided to go up the mountain to investigate. Although he was very confident in the security of the 5-star hotel, before Shi left, he still set up layers of restrictions inside and outside to prevent anyone from breaking in and hurting the little fellow. This behavior was somewhat groundless, but Shi always felt that it was better to be safe than sorry. One could never be too careful. He hadn't even found his wife yet. If he lost his child, he couldn't guarantee that he wouldn't do something terrible. It was the wee hours of the morning, and Shi was like a fish back in water, quickly skimming over one roof after another. The night was his best coat, so even if someone happened to look up at the sky and see him, they would only think that they were seeing things. Shi hadn't recovered much of his true essence, so in order to reduce his consumption, he had to give up on flying. Instead, he leaped from roof to roof in the city. Although he wasn't flying, his speed was still extremely fast. In less than 5 minutes, Shi had already arrived at the foot of Mount Immerse. At this time, Shi suddenly seemed to have thought of something, and hurriedly turned back. I almost forgot, although those restrictions could prevent outsiders from entering, they couldn't prevent the little fellow from going out. If the little fellow woke up and found that he was gone, crying would be a small matter. If she ran out to find him, then it would be really troublesome. He didn't want it to be like the 3 of them fighting the white bone demon, where Sun Wukong drew a circle and the demon couldn't enter, but Tang Sanzang went out himself. Shi would never allow himself to make such a low-level mistake. Back in the room, Shi saw that the little fellow was still lying on the bed, and he couldn't help but feel relieved. Gently kissing the little fellow's face, Shi cast a meditation spell on the little fellow to prevent her from waking up prematurely. After that, Shi patched up the restrictions that prevented the little fellow from going out, and finally rushed to Mount Immerse with relief. The environment of Mount Immerse was relatively humid, and the humid areas were known for long fogs, so it was easy for heavy fog to appear on Mount Immerse in the morning and evening. Therefore, many tourists would pray that there wouldn't be heavy fog on Jinding the next morning, so that they could see the famous sunrise on Jinding. Shi ran along the sightseeing path. Because it was early in the morning, other than 2 or 3 cars of the scenic area's staff, he didn't meet anyone else along the way. After running for about half an hour, Shi came to a place called the Elephant Washing Pool. This place belonged to the high mountain area, and the urban area was only 420 meters above sea level, but the altitude here had reached 2070 meters. Here, white clouds were faintly discernible, and ancient trees towered into the sky. Shi stood on a stone path, and next to him was a cliff. Borrowing the silver light of the clear autumn moon, he lowered his head and looked at the cliff that was like an abyss. Then, he suddenly climbed over the fence and jumped down from the cliff. It took half an hour to come up, but it only took a few minutes to go down. At the bottom of the cliff, there was a basin forest, and near the cliff, there were a lot of rubbish thrown by tourists. Because it was getting closer and closer, Qin frowned slightly because of the strange aura. He really didn't expect that in an environment like Earth, where the spiritual energy was sparse, monsters could be born. What was a monster? Monsters were things that covered the essence of qi. Qi was chaotic in the middle, and things changed outside. The form, spirit, qi, and quality were used on the outside and the inside. It was based on the 5 elements and connected to the 5 things. Although the rise and fall of information and change everything, it could be discussed in terms of the phenomenon of reconciliation and blame. It could be roughly understood that monsters that looked like animals, plants, or some other things, but had wisdom and emotions like humans were all called monsters. As an immortal cultivator, Qin had a deeper understanding of this. Everything had a spirit, and animals and plants were no exception. Although they were full of bestiality and had extremely low intelligence, there were still some strange creatures among them. These strange creatures might be born with it, or they might have a fortuitous encounter. In short, they learned to refine the spiritual energy of heaven and earth like humans, thus making them stand out from the rest. Just like immortal cultivators, they had unimaginable power. This was a monster. Monsters and immortal cultivators were the same, they also had different realms. Gathering spirit and awakening intelligence were equivalent to immortal cultivators' qi refining stage and foundation establishment stage. And the reason why Qin was attracted to this place was because there was a monster in the awakening intelligence stage here. On a planet like Earth that lacked spiritual energy, there was actually a monster whose cultivation was equivalent to the foundation establishment stage. This was obviously enough to arouse Qin's curiosity. As he got closer and closer to the monster's aura that ordinary people couldn't detect became stronger and stronger. After passing through a forest, Qin finally saw the monster's body on a huge rock that was comparable to a public bus. It stood on the huge rock, its head was raised high, as if it was looking up at the full moon in the sky. The cold moonlight shone on the bottom of the valley, and the monster's shadow was elongated. Explanation: I found that many readers of QQ Browser and QQ Reading are urging me to update. Thank you for your support. This is my new book, and it only has 130,000 words. It was first published on Qidian, and my new book period is not over yet. There will be continuous recommendations for new books. If my word count is too high, it will be published in a short period of time. Then, I won't have any follow-up recommendations, and the results will be fixed as before. So, don't compare me to the authors of QQ Reading, because the types of books are different, so the first website is also different. I have just been published on 6th frequency, and there are still 3rd river and 1 or 2 small recommendations. I will only be published after the first page is strongly recommended. This process will probably last for another month. So, I'll have to trouble you to rest first. It's useless to urge me because Qidian's books are arranged this way. Chapter 58. Mount Immerse was the prettiest mountain in the world. As an international 5A tourist attraction with a double heritage of world culture and nature, it received more than 3 million tourists a year. Therefore, Qin really did not expect that he would find a monster at the enlightened realm at the foot of Mount Immerse. This monster seemed to have found the way to refine the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, so it chose such a place with the richest spiritual qi to cultivate silently. After all, the mountain man was an immortal. Monsters cultivated immortality, and in the endless heavens, they first cultivated the human path and then became immortal. Human beings were the head of all things, and they were born like a flawless piece of white paper. Naturally, it was easier for them to ascend the heavenly path than other things. However, humans were complicated. Some fell in love and never got out, some killed and harmed others to create karma, some refused to follow their hearts and sink into their nature. Human nature was not divided into good and evil, and water was not divided into things. It was easy to do good, and easier to do evil. If a person cultivated their heart from a young age, they would be pure and unimpeded. Naturally, it would be easier for them to step on the great path than other things. There was no free meal in the world, and how could there be an easy way to become an immortal? The devil path was easy to practice evil, and the ghost path was easy to practice suicide. The righteous path was difficult to practice, and it was difficult to achieve 1,000 tribulations. Shi didn't come here to slay demons and devils, he was just purely curious. Monsters were actually not as evil and cunning as shown in novels and movies. Before they gained intelligence, there was no distinction between good and bad in their behavior. Everything was based on instinct in order to survive. Natural selection, survival of the fittest, this was the law of nature. After gaining intelligence, they would learn to think like humans, but they would be much more innocent than humans. As for the complicated feelings that humans had towards demons, it was actually more due to the antagonism between races. In nature, there was no such thing as cruelty and killing. There were only producers, consumers, and decomposers. The monster in front of him seemed to have gained intelligence for a long time, so Shi did not feel too much of a bloody smell from it. Instead, it had the calm and tranquility of a reclusive master. It was now the era of firearms, and human civilization had developed to become omnipotent. The living environment of monsters was also more dangerous, so Shi was ready to leave after watching for a while. He had come without a sound, so naturally, he had to leave without a sound as well. However, just as Shi turned to leave, the demon suddenly lowered its head and inadvertently saw Shi's back. It was stunned for a moment, and an extremely anthropomorphic expression appeared on its face. Then it suddenly came back to its senses, and its fur suddenly stood up. Like a frightened cat, it immediately made a pouncing posture toward Shi's back. Yes, this was a leopard, and an extremely rare ink leopard. What was an ink leopard? It had the body of a tiger, but was only 1/3 the size of a tiger. It was a medium-sized carnivorous beast, also known as a leopard or leopard. It is the smallest of the 4 large cats in the genus Panthera, the other 3 are lions, tigers, and jaguars. Shoulder height is about 0, body length is about 1, tail length is about 60 centimeters, weight is 60 to 100 kilograms. It had a round head, short ears, strong and powerful limbs, sharp claws, and strong flexibility. The leopard's whole body was bright, and its fur was brown and yellow. It was covered with black spots and rings, forming an ancient coin-like pattern, so it was called a leopard. Unlike the grayish-white snow leopard, the ink leopard was a black-colored individual produced by the mutation of the leopard's fur color. Its whole body was dark black, and there were still copper spots on it. Therefore, this type of individual was often called an ink leopard. The leopard's physical strength was very strong, and its vision and smell were very sensitive. It was alert, and it could swim and climb trees. It became a bold and fierce carnivore with a wide range of food. It was good at jumping and climbing. It usually lived alone and came out at night, early in the morning, or in the evening. It often wandered back and forth in the forest. Its nature was fierce, but it usually did not hurt people. Leopards were different from lions and tigers. Their biggest difference, other than their size, was their roar. The roar of lions and tigers was really roar, but the roar of leopards was meow. There were 2 major types of cats, called mimi cats and roaring cats in foreign countries. Tigers and lions could roar, and were called roaring cats. Cheetahs were classified as mimi cats and could not roar loudly. The reason for this difference was that the structure of the hyoid bone in their throats was different. However, this difference was not enough to separate them into 2 families, so they were all classified as large cats. Of course, unlike the clear sound of a cat, a leopard's roar would have a hint of hoarseness. Leopards and cats were the same. Their eyes had night vision, so even if Shi's figure was covered by the shadows of the forest, this ink leopard was still sharp enough to notice him. As an intelligent wild beast, the ink leopard's intelligence was not inferior to that of a human's. Therefore, it was very clear that if this person was allowed to return alive, then there would definitely be groups of search teams coming to look for it the next day. And it would once again embark on the path of finding a habitat. Therefore, almost without any hesitation, the ink leopard's muscles tightened, and then it suddenly pounced. Its body was like an eagle pecking at food, and it flew off the giant rock at an extremely fast speed, directly pouncing on Shi's back. However, just as it was about to pounce on the human figure, a hand strangely appeared in front of its eyes. The ink leopard was shocked. Before it could react, the hand directly grabbed its neck, and then, like pinching a duck, it pinched its neck and hung it in the air. Monsters were different from humans. They did not learn so many mysterious and unpredictable spells. Their sharp fangs and claws were their most advantageous weapons, and their skin was their strongest defense. Even if they had intelligence, they would continue to temper and strengthen their bodies, and fight against immortal cultivators purely with their physical bodies. Therefore, when the ink leopard's neck was pinched, the sharp claws on its front legs immediately popped out, and viciously scratched at the human's arm. However, after its sharp claws scratched, the ink leopard was shocked to find that its indestructible claws could not even scratch the human skin. At this time, the force from the arm grew stronger, and the ink leopard's breathing became more and more difficult. It had just gained intelligence, but it was far from reaching the stage where it could not eat, drink, or breathe. Meow, the ink leopard struggled and let out a cry, and Qin-Shi saw a pleading expression on its face. After thinking for a while, Qin-Shi slightly loosened his fingers, and let the ink leopard fall from his hand. Forget it, with the environment on Earth, without the inheritance of a tribe, and without the guidance of a powerful person, it's already not easy for you to cultivate to the point of gaining intelligence. Go, I'll spare your life today, but you have to remember, don't kill people in the future. After saying that, Qin-Shi turned around and walked back the way he came. The ink leopard crouched on the ground, and put on a defensive posture. However, after hearing Qin-Shi's words, a confused expression immediately appeared on its face. It looked in the direction that Qin-Shi left, and its eyes rolled around, as if it was thinking about something. After hesitating for a while, the ink leopard seemed to have made a decision, and started running in the direction that Qin-Shi left. Qin-Shi stood at the bottom of the cliff, and was thinking about whether there was a shorter way to return. At this time, there was a faint sound coming from the forest. Qin-Shi turned around and saw that the ink leopard was actually following him. The ink leopard carefully came to a place not far from Qin-Shi, and then suddenly bent its front legs, lowered its head, and let out a series of meows. Qin-Shi thought for a while, and then asked, "You want to go with me?" Hearing this, the ink leopard immediately raised its head and nodded in a very human-like manner. Then, it let out a meow. Interesting, Qin-Shi suddenly laughed, and asked, "Can you become smaller?" The ink leopard tilted its head, as if it did not understand what Qin-Shi meant. However, it seemed to be afraid that Qin-Shi would not want it, so it quickly let out another meow, and at the same time, used its front paws to scratch the ground a few times. Seeing this, Qin-Shi squatted down, and then put his hand on its head. Just nice, Nian needs a partner. This great wilderness physical exercise technique is a bargain for you. Thank you, Ning Xiaojia, for the 10,000 reward. I have to hug Ning Xiaojia's long legs tightly. Chapter 59. The next day. By the time the little fellow woke up, the sun was already up to her butt. Qin-Shi was sitting in the yard, quietly reading a magazine. A black kitten was curled up in a ball, yawning at his feet in boredom. The little fellow sat up, then raised her hands and rubbed her eyes. Before he put down his hands, she had already shouted in a muffled voice, "Papa, Papa. Hey, here, I'm coming." Hearing the little fellow's shout, Qin-Shi immediately dropped the magazine in his hand and ran into the room. "Papa, carry me." The little fellow couldn't open her eyes. After glancing at Qin-Shi through a slit, she stretched out her hands for him to carry her. "Okay, let's go. Papa will take you to wash your face." Qin-Shi put his hand under the little fellow's armpit, lifted her up from the bed, and then carried her to wash up. After washing her face and brushing her teeth, the little fellow finally woke up. Perhaps it was because she had rested well last night, but she seemed to be in high spirits. Before Qin-Shi had time to wash her face for the second time, the little fellow had run out of the bathroom excitedly. "I'm going to climb the mountain." "Don't worry, eat first." Qin-Shi quickly put down the towel and chased out. At this time, the little fellow suddenly exclaimed, "Ah! Kitty! The black cat was squatting at the door and watching. When it saw the little fellow pouncing on it, it immediately jumped to the bed and avoided the little fellow. The little fellow was not as agile as it. After missing, she didn't give up and turned around to chase it again. But the black cat didn't seem to like being close to her, so it jumped to the bed, kicked the wall hard, and flew out of the little fellow's head. At this time, Chin-shi also came out of the bathroom. He saw the little fellow looking at the black cat eagerly with a face full of desire, so he immediately shouted, "Come back, let her touch you." The black cat paused, and then reluctantly moved to the little fellow. The little fellow squatted down, hugged the black cat and laughed, "Papa. I love it." The black cat struggled to jump out, but Chin-shi glared at it and said, "Remember, it used to be heaven boss, earth second, and you third. Now it's her boss, my second, and you third." Meow. Hearing this, the black cat meowed weakly, as if responding to Chin-shi. The little fellow rubbed the black cat's chin with both hands and then patted its head. She looked at Chin-shi and asked, "Papa, what's its name?" Let's call it Big Cat." "Good. Big Cat. From now on, you're my pet." The little guy hugged the big cat tightly in his arms. However, she did not notice that the black cat in her arms had actually rolled its eyes. Cats were cold by nature. They were the polar opposite of dogs. Therefore, Chin-shi thought for a moment and said to it, "You're also a cat, so I'll treat you as a cat for the time being. Nyan is still young. In the future, in addition to staying by her side to take care of her and protect her, you also have to play with her. You can only be happy when she's happy, understand?" Speaking of this, Chin-shi paused, thought for a moment, and then added, "Don't be as arrogant as a cat. You have to be more enthusiastic and unrestrained like a dog, okay?" The big cat did not say a word and was silent for a long time. Chin-shi was a little dissatisfied. After giving it a fierce stare, he threatened, "You don't want to? Then I'll go find another dog to play with her." The big cat was frightened. Now that it had tasted the sweetness, of course, it was not willing to leave. Therefore, after thinking about it, it chose to compromise. Self-esteem was not important, therefore, the big cat stuck out its tongue and licked the little fellow's little face a few times. Suddenly, the little fellow laughed loudly. Because they still had to climb the mountain, one day was obviously not enough, so Chin-shi could only renew the room. After lunch, the father and daughter took the cat and set off in a car. Although they were going to climb the mountain, in fact, the only one who was really climbing the mountain was Chin-shi. The little fellow sat in his arms, and the black cat sat in the little fellow's arms. This strange combination had attracted the attention of countless people along the way. One must know that the weight of a soldier during daily training was generally about 15 kilograms, and it would only reach 20 kilograms during intensive training. Chin-shi was still climbing the mountain. A 4-year-old child and a cat would weigh at least 20 kilograms, which completely met the standard of intensive training. Therefore, after walking for a while, Chin-shi felt that something was wrong. It was too eye-catching. But he could not put the little fellow down and let her walk on her own. Therefore, after thinking for a while, Chin-shi simply quickened his pace. Under the stunned expressions of the crowd of tourists, he quickly walked up the mountain. There were so many people here. As long as he got rid of the tourists below, the tourists above would naturally not know how far he had walked with the child. The little fellow was purely looking for novelty and had no special interest in the scenery, so Chin-shi directly took her to the cable car that went straight to Jinding. Hearing that they were going to take the cable car, the little fellow was very excited at first, but when she really got on, she felt a little scared. The cable car was different from the plane. Not to mention the small space, the carriage kept shaking when it moved. The little fellow sat next to Chin-shi and hesitantly glanced at the woods below the cable car. She was immediately scared and got into Chin-shi's arms, then whispered, "Papa, how long do we have to sit?" "I don't want to sit." Chin-shi did not expect this. He had always thought that the little fellow was not afraid of heights, so he quickly held the little fellow tightly in his arms and softly comforted her, "Good girl, don't be afraid. If you are so afraid of heights, then Papa can't take you to play in the sky in the future. Hearing this, the little fellow immediately shook her head and said loudly, I'm not afraid. I want to play in the sky. After that, she wanted to pretend to be very brave and turned her little head to look out of the window. But then, she was frightened by the height outside and quickly got back into Qinshi's arms, not daring to show her head again. Qinshi touched her head and said with a smile, well, Papa is here. Don't be afraid. The Jinding cable car was 1,164 meters long, so they could not sit for long. After getting off the cable car, the little fellow's interest was obviously reduced a lot. Obviously, she had a psychological shadow. Zhu Mo, the 21st son of Zhu Yuanzhang of the Ming dynasty, was a devout Buddhist. He was rewarded 3,000 taels of gold and built the Great Imei Golden Hall at the highest point of Mount Imei. Because the roof tiles, pillars, doors, and lattices of the Golden Hall were all copper and gold, and under the sun, it shone brightly, so it was called Jinding. The real Golden Hall was destroyed in the turmoil many years ago, so now the Golden Hall was a modern building after being restored, not an ancient building that had been handed down. The scenery of Jinding was really beautiful. The vast sea of clouds spread out on the horizon like a snow-white carpet, smooth, thick, and boundless. When the mountain wind blew, the sea of clouds drifted away, and the peaks and ridges became small islands in the sea of clouds. Then, Qinshi took a picture of the little fellow in front of the golden statue of Samantabhadra of 10 directions. Chapter 60. After soaking in the hot spring again, the trip was coming to an end. At noon the next day, just as Qinshi was packing up and preparing to take Nianyan back to Chengdu, Lin Xian called. Ever since he saved Lin Xian that day, Qinshi had never seen Lin Xian again, and he never had the chance to make up for the meal he owed her. It had only been less than a week, but to Qinshi, it felt like a long time had passed, so much so that he couldn't hear anything wrong from Lin Xian's tone. However, the more normal she acted, the more Qinshi felt that something was wrong with her. What have you been busy with recently? I'm taking Nianyan to Chengdu to play, what's wrong? Chengdu? The rehearsal is tomorrow, I thought I should let you know, but don't forget, Fang Lei only has one flower girl and one monk. If you screw up, she'll really be at a loss. Don't worry, we're ready to come back. Qinshi was talking on the phone while looking at the little girl who was playing hide-and-seek with the big cat in the yard. Okay, then I won't nag you, see you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. The so-called hide-and-seek was not a game of hide-and-seek, but a real game of hide-and-seek. The little girl ran, and the big cat chased. It was also difficult for the big cat. Every time it was about to catch up, the little girl would make a smart turn, and then the big cat would have to deliberately pretend that it couldn't make the turn and rush forward, making the little girl stand at the side and laugh. Okay, Nianyan, stop playing, we should go back to Chengdu. Qinshi walked into the yard, picked up the little girl from behind, and then carried her out. When the big cat saw this, it immediately jumped onto Qinshi's shoulder and laid down on Qinshi's shoulder to take a nap. Before returning to Zhonghai, he had to let the little girl say goodbye to Aunt Zhang. He had already seen Aunt Zhang's WeChat message, but he didn't dare to reply. Aunt Zhang didn't call him after that, so Qinshi was a little nervous. He couldn't figure out what Aunt Zhang was thinking. Although he was hesitating, Qinshi didn't stop walking. After checking out, he took the little fellow and got on the bus to Chengdu. Everything would have to wait until she met Aunt Zhang. To be honest, Qinshi didn't really want to meet Aunt Zhang at this time, but for the sake of the little one, he had to brace himself and make the trip. When he returned to Chengdu, it was only 2 in the afternoon, so Qinshi booked a plane ticket online. In order not to return home too late, he booked the plane ticket for 7:20 p.m. And this time, he bought a first-class ticket. He still had more than 100,000 yuan in his card, so in order to make the little girl happy, he wouldn't hesitate to spend money at all. However, after buying the plane ticket, Qinshi seemed to have thought of something. He frowned and glanced at the big cat in the little girl's arms. Pets couldn't board the plane, and the first thing to do was to get a quarantine certificate. Then, it would be placed in a pet air box for random transportation. Thinking about it, it was troublesome, so Chin-shi glanced at the big cat, thinking that since it was so smart, it should have a way to sneak through the security check. As long as it could pass the security check, he could put it in his travel bag and bring it on the plane. After leaving the station, Chin-shi took a taxi with the little girl and the big cat to number 262 Courtyard on Wuho Temple Street. Today was Thursday, so Xia Pinglin and Kai Shu-chin were not at home. Aunt Zhang was alone at home to take care of her granddaughter. Grandma. Grandma. Open the door, we're back. Chin-shi used the little girl's body to block himself and then sent her to knock on the door. The door opened quickly. Aunt Zhang glanced at the little girl, then glanced at Chin-shi who was hiding behind her. She couldn't help but snort coldly and said, "You've grown up, huh? You don't even answer my phone." After saying that, she turned around and went back into the house. Seeing this, Chin-shi immediately put the little girl down, then patted her back, indicating for her to follow. The little girl understood what Chin-shi meant, so she quickly ran into the house. After Aunt Zhang sat on the sofa, she immediately lay on her lap. "Grandma. I missed you so much." Chin-shi hesitated at the door for a moment before entering the house. In the house, Aunt Zhang was sitting on the sofa with the little girl in her arms. The little girl kept saying good things about Chin-shi, so that Aunt Zhang would not be angry. Aunt Zhang was talking to the little girl in a pleasant manner, but when she saw Chin-shi come in, she glared at Chin-shi fiercely and then said somewhat angrily, "Hurry up and sit down." "Oh, okay. Tell me honestly, what's going on with that one? 8 million? Where did you get so much money?" Aunt Zhang was the first person to see Chin-shi, so she naturally knew how much he was worth. However, she did not expect that as soon as she left Zhonghai, Chin-shi would follow her with 1.8 million. Was he robbing a bank? Hearing this, Chin-shi immediately adjusted his expression and said very seriously, "It's like this. You know, I used to study computer science, and I've been in this line of work since I graduated. Didn't I have a small gathering with a few classmates some time ago? Then they asked me to invest and develop a new software together. You also know that the internet is the most profitable industry now, so I didn't tell you before because it hasn't been done yet." Chin-shi took advantage of the fact that Aunt Zhang did not understand the internet and went up to fool her. Aunt Zhang listened for a long time and saw that he seemed to be telling the truth, so she somewhat believed his words. After all, everything related to the internet in the past few years was too deeply ingrained in people's hearts. So after thinking for a while, Aunt Zhang said solemnly, 1.8 million is too much. If you really want to give me a salary, then it's 200,000 for 4 years. Plus the 50,000 you gave me before, 25 is about enough. It's not easy for you to make money. Wait for me, I'll give you the card." After that, Aunt Zhang wanted to get up to get the card. Seeing this, Chin-shi immediately motioned for the little girl to come over. When Yin crawled over, he picked up the little girl, then stood up and ran out of the house. As he ran, he said, "If you don't accept this money, then don't blame us for not coming back in the future." After he said that, the little girl immediately echoed, "Yes. I'm not coming back. I'm not coming back either." Aunt Zhang stood in the living room and saw that the two of them were so determined. After hesitating for a while, she could only sigh deeply and say, "You should know that I didn't take care of your child for the sake of money all these years, I know." Chin-shi quickly interrupted Aunt Zhang and said hurriedly, "Since it's not a matter of money, then all the more you should accept it because it's not a salary, it's a filial piety of mine. 1.8 million isn't a lot. To tell you the truth, I earned a total of 5 million this time, and now I have more than 3 million left." Hearing this, Aunt Zhang looked at Chin-shi with a complicated expression. After a while, she sighed deeply and sat back down on the sofa. Parting is always in September. Memories are the sorrow of missing the green weeping willows in late autumn, kissing my forehead in that rainy little town. I've never forgotten you, Chengdu Airport. Chin-shi sat in the first-class VIP lounge with the little girl in his arms. Big Cat had run out to observe the terrain. "Papa, why doesn't Grandma want money?" "Because Grandma is a good person." Chapter 61. Zhonghai. After getting off the plane, Qin quickly walked out of the station with the little girl in his arms. The big cat was probably feeling a little uncomfortable because it kept struggling in the bag. Thinking about it, it would take at least 3 to 4 hours to fly from Rong City to Zhonghai. It had been locked in the bag the entire time, and even breathing was a little difficult. If Qin hadn't released a trace of Jin Yuan for it to refine, this guy would have already started to rebel because of the suffocation. So when they reached the exit, Qin quickly let it out. As soon as the zipper was pulled open, the big cat eagerly got out of the bag. Then, it jumped to the ground and immediately shook its body like a dog. "Big cat, thank you for your hard work." The little girl held the big cat in her arms, and the big cat looked around curiously. At this time, a familiar voice suddenly sounded. "Mr. Qin, you're back." She looked in the direction of the voice and saw Ning Zhonghua suddenly coming out of the car next to him. He couldn't help but ask with some doubts, "Mr. Ning, what a coincidence." Hearing this, Ning Zhonghua smiled and said, "It's not a coincidence, I'm here to welcome you back." "Welcome me back? How do you know which flight I'm on?" "I have a friend who is an old leader of the airline company. The day you left, I had already said hello to him and asked him to inform me of your return. As soon as you got on the plane, I received the news and set off." Hearing this, Qin had to say helplessly, "Mr. Ning, we are old acquaintances. You don't have to be so polite." No, you are my savior, and now you are old Zhang's savior. If you have any needs, of course I should be at your service. What kind of need is taking a taxi?" She was a little speechless. But since Ning Zhonghua was here, of course, he couldn't refuse his kindness, so he got into Ning Zhonghua's car at his invitation. In fact, how could she not know what Ning Zhonghua was thinking? However, this wasn't a bad thing for Qin, so he naturally wouldn't reject people from thousands of miles away. After getting in the car, Qin asked about Zhang Jiada's recent situation. Ning Zhonghua immediately explained, "Thanks to you, old Zhang has recovered. However, maybe he still can't accept this fact in his heart, so he has been locking himself up at home. I went to visit him a few times, but I was refused at the door. Now, I can only pray that he can walk out of the shadow soon." At this point, Ning Zhonghua couldn't help but let out a long sigh. He lamented, "I didn't expect that his illness was actually caused by Ziyuan. I don't know where that brat learned this crooked method. He actually used it on his own father. He's really a villain. It's really scary. How is Zhang Ziyuan now? Old Zhang and him are father and son after all." Naturally, he couldn't take his life, so in the end, he gave him a sum of money and sent him abroad, never to let him come back. Unfortunate family. Hearing this, Qin was also quite emotional. Then, he looked down at the little guy in his arms, and his understanding of education was much deeper in his heart. The car soon arrived at Kangju district. After Ning Zhonghua and Qin exchanged a few polite words, Ning Zhonghua decisively ordered the driver to drive away. This made Qin a little confused. He thought that Ning Zhonghua would make some request, but he didn't expect that Ning Zhonghua didn't say anything in the end. Could it be that he really came all the way here just to welcome me back? Is this necessary? Qin thought as he walked into the district with the little guy in his arms. When they returned home, Qin put the little guy on the ground and prepared to change his shoes. At this time, the little guy raised the big cat in front of her and said to it solemnly, "Big cat, look, we are home. This will be your home in the future." After that, she ran into the living room with the big cat in her arms, and then directly turned on the TV to look for cartoons. "Big cat, I'll treat you to cartoons." Meow. The next day. Because there was a rehearsal in the afternoon and the wedding tomorrow, Qin extended the little guy's vacation to the day after tomorrow. After breakfast, Qin was still washing the dishes. The little guy ran over with the big cat in her arms, and then said happily, "Papa, I want to take the big cat out to play." Where do you want to play?" "In the yard." "Oh, okay, wait for me, I'll go with you." Qin nodded. When he was about to put the washed dishes into the cupboard, the little guy secretly smiled, turned around, and ran to the door with the big cat in her arms. "Hey, don't run." She took the bowl and quickly chased out of the kitchen. But the little guy didn't listen at all. She ran to the door, and then tiptoed to open the door. Seeing this, she couldn't stop her, so he had to shout to the big cat, "Big cat, look after her, don't let her out of the community." With the big cat accompanying her, the little guy shouldn't have any problems in the community, so she was not in a hurry. He was going to tidy up the kitchen and then go out to play with her. Although the child was still young, he had to give her some freedom, didn't he? But then again, Nyan used to be very obedient and never ran out by herself. But the big cat had only been here for less than a day, and Nyan already dared to run out alone with it? Could it be that she was led astray by the big cat? As she washed the dishes, he wondered if he should warn the big cat. Although the big cat's intelligence was high, it was still a beast after all. In addition, it had been hiding in the mountains for years to practice, so its mind was as pure as Nyan's. After these 2 days of being together, it was more and more obedient to Nyan's words. After Nyan ran downstairs, she directly took the big cat to the children's activity area in the center of the community. This children's activity area was originally just an empty space. At that time, the neighborhood committee hadn't been disbanded yet. Everyone saw that there were more and more children in the community, so they organized all the residents to pool money together. Each family contributed more than 10 yuan to transform this place into a children's activity area. The so-called children's activity area actually only had 1 slide and 3 swings. Later, when the street office heard about this, they spent money to buy a few outdoor fitness equipment for the community, completely turning this empty space into an important leisure activity area in the community. The little girl carried the big cat to the slide. This slide wasn't as exquisite and beautiful as the slide in the kindergarten. Many parts of the slide had even peeled off, but the little girl didn't mind at all. She carried the big cat and climbed up directly. She waited in line until the child in front of her landed safely before sitting at the slide. Then, she carried the big cat and slid down excitedly. One slide was actually only a few seconds, but the little girl liked to play, so she immediately stood up after landing and was ready to line up again to play again. But at this moment, the child behind her didn't seem to notice her, so he rushed down and kicked the little girl's calf directly. The little girl immediately lost her balance after being hit by him, and her whole body fell straight to the ground just like that. Chapter 62. The sudden turn of events caused the little guy to lose his balance. His small body immediately fell straight to the ground. Because she was holding the big cat with both hands, she couldn't use her hands to support herself on the ground. Seeing that she was about to fall to the ground, the little fellow was worried about the big cat in her arms. So she instinctively bent her body slightly, afraid that she would crush the big cat if she fell. Bang! After a muffled sound, the little fellow fell heavily to the ground, face first. But fortunately, the big cat was a monster after all. So at the last critical moment, the big cat suddenly jumped out of the little fellow's arms and used its body to support her face, so that the little fellow wouldn't fall to the ground. The little fellow lay on the ground, her head on the big cat's body. Big cat. After regaining her senses, she immediately sat on the ground and hugged the big cat again, ignoring the pain. In the little fellow's heart, the big cat was younger than her, so she should be the one to take care of the big cat. The little fellow nervously looked at the big cat's condition, and after seeing that it didn't seem to have any problems, she wanted to stand up with the big cat in her arms. But just as she moved her feet, she suddenly felt a piercing pain in her knee. The little fellow looked down and found that the skin on her left knee had been scraped, and blood was still oozing out. It looked very serious. The blood mixed with the dust on her knee, and the bright red stain against her white skin was particularly eye-catching. Seeing that she was injured, the big cat immediately jumped out of her arms and made a pouncing posture towards the little boy behind the little fellow. Meow. The big cat jumped to the ground, its front feet touching the ground, and its back legs slightly bent. All the hair on its body stood on end. It stared at the little boy, slightly grimaced, and made a low and hoarse voice. If it wasn't for Qinshi's strict order to not change back to its original form, it would have already transformed and pounced on the little boy. Big cat. Don't scare people. Seeing this, the little guy immediately reached out and pressed the big cat's back, dragging it back to his side. Then, he hugged the big cat tightly in his arms. The little boy seemed to be frightened by the big cat's appearance. He stood where he was and didn't dare to move. Cats usually don't attack people, but if they really go crazy and bite people, they are much more powerful than dogs. At this time, his parents also saw the situation here, so they quickly ran over to protect the little boy behind them. The little boy's parent was an auntie about the same age as Auntie Zhang. He seemed to be very afraid of the big cat and immediately hid half of his body behind the auntie. The woman looked at the little boy and then at Ninian. When she saw the injury on Ninian's knee, she immediately understood what had happened. Thus, the auntie grabbed the little boy's ear and pulled him out from behind her, then shouted at him, "Little brat, why aren't you apologizing to your little sister?" After hearing the auntie's scolding, the little boy seemed to understand his mistake, so he lowered his head and said softly, "I'm sorry, little sister, didn't you eat?" Louder. The little boy was shocked by the auntie's roar. After hesitating for a while, he cried out, "I'm sorry." Hearing this, Ninian smiled sweetly and said generously, "Grandma, it's okay, don't blame brother." But after she said that, her little face couldn't help but wrinkle. The pain from her knee made her unable to stand steadily. The auntie saw her in pain and immediately squatted in front of her, asking with concern, "Little sister, where is your house? Let me send you home. Don't worry, I'll take revenge for you later by smacking his butt." Ninian shook her head and hurriedly said, "Grandma, don't hit brother. I'm fine, I can go home by myself. My house is there." The little girl turned around and pointed behind her, then looked at the injury on her knee. She then said seriously to the auntie, "I'm going home. Goodbye, Grandma." After saying that, she turned around and walked back the way she came. She walked very slowly. The injury on her knee made her unable to lift her leg too much, so she could only move out step by step. The auntie saw her pitiful look and was instantly furious. She pulled the little boy's ear and shouted at him, "How dare you bully people, how dare you bully people." As she said that, the auntie used her hand to slap the little boy's butt. The little boy cried out in pain and shouted, "I didn't do it on purpose." Ninian carefully moved home. Because it was only a scratch, there wasn't much blood on her knee. But that kind of pain was real. It was so painful that she couldn't walk. The little girl didn't know why she didn't cry. In short, her mind was completely blank right now. There was only one thought left, to go home. She slowly walked through the forest path and then came to the main road of the community. Opposite was her home. The little girl stood on the side of the road, looked around carefully, and then moved over step by step. Suddenly, Qinshi's figure appeared downstairs. Then, the little girl felt as if she was suddenly flying. The scene in front of her was like a TV series that was fast-forwarded, switching quickly, and her ears were full of whistling sounds. When she came back to her senses, she found that she had returned home. What happened? Qinshi sat on the sofa, then put the little girl on his lap, and then looked at the big cat expressionlessly. The big cat was frightened. It was a beast and a monster in the wisdom realm, so it was particularly sensitive to aura and danger. Qinshi suddenly burst out a strong murderous aura, which scared it so much that its hair stood up, and its whole body seemed to be bigger. "Papa, I'm fine, it doesn't hurt." The little girl seemed to feel Qinshi's strangeness, so she reached out and touched Qinshi's face. Her fingers were a little cold, much colder than Qinshi's face. Qinshi felt the little girl's movement, so he looked down at her, reached out and touched her little face, and then gently put his hand on the little girl's knee. "Tell Papa, who bullied you?" While speaking, Qinshi's true essence rushed out like a flash flood, and the injury on the little girl's knee suddenly began to recover at a speed visible to the naked eye. However, after hearing Qinshi's words, the little girl shook her head and whispered, brother didn't bully me, he didn't mean to hit me, Papa, don't hit brother. Was it really an accident? Hearing this, Chin-shi couldn't help but frown, and turned to look at the big cat. Seeing this, the big cat immediately meowed. Fearing that Chin-shi wouldn't understand, it quickly nodded its head. 5 minutes later. When Chin-shi took his hand away, the little girl's knee had completely recovered. Her calf was as smooth as white jade, as if it had never been injured. The little girl scratched her knee doubtfully, but found that it was as if she had never been injured. Except for the itch in her knee, she didn't feel any pain. She was still young, so she didn't know that what happened in front of her could even be called a miracle. But she knew that it was Papa who cured her. So the little girl immediately laughed and kissed Chin-shi on the face. Papa is so amazing. I don't hurt anymore. Asterisk 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 asterisk. Chapter 63. In the wedding rehearsal, the main characters were, of course, the bride and groom. Therefore, as a flower girl, the little fellow could not have too many scenes. She only needed to take a flower basket full of petals, appear before the bride, and sprinkle flowers along the carpet. The reason why she was asked to come to the rehearsal was that he was worried that the child would be too young to walk alone on the carpet under the attention of thousands of people. A wedding was sacred and solemn, so it should be done to the best of its ability. Because of the episode just now, the little fellow did not want to go out to play anymore. Seeing this, Chin-shi took her out directly and took a taxi to the address sent by Lin Xian, ready to let her play at the rehearsal place. Fang Lei's family was very rich, which Chin-shi had always known. But it was not until he took the little fellow to the rehearsal place sent by Lin Xian that Chin-shi suddenly had a more intuitive understanding of Fang Lei's family's financial resources. Because Fang Lei's wedding would be held on a luxurious cruise ship. In recent years, with the development of society, cruise ship tourism had become an important part of the international tourism industry, and the total number of passengers around the world was as many as millions. Therefore, more and more people in Huaxia chose to travel by cruise ship. Cruise ships were no longer a rare thing, but it was rare to see someone like Fang Lei who rented an entire cruise ship just for the sake of holding a wedding. This cruise ship was called Xingmeng, and it was a very luxurious large cruise ship, with a displacement of up to 120,000 tons and a maximum capacity of 3,500 passengers. Xingmeng had only been out of the factory for a short time, so compared with some cruise ships around the dock that had been in service for more than 10 or 20 years, it was particularly eye-catching and even exuded a fascinating sense of science fiction. Papa, this ship is so big, even bigger than the Buddha. Chin-shi stood on the dock with the little fellow in his arms. The little fellow looked up at the giant cruise ship in front of her, and could not help but open her mouth slightly and let out such a sigh. Hearing this, Chin-shi rubbed her little head and said, "The ship is one by one, not one by one, remember?" "Oh, I remember." The little girl nodded blankly, then pointed at the cruise ship and shouted, "Papa, I want to go up and play. I want to take a big ship." "Don't worry, we can only go up when Big Sister comes to pick us up." So, Chin-shi hid in the shadow of the cruise ship with the little girl in his arms. While telling her a story, he quietly waited for Lin Xian to arrive. It was now afternoon, and the salty sea breeze wrapped around the warm sunlight, making everything around them seem so peaceful. On the pier, the sound of crashing waves could be heard again and again. It was like pleasant music, making people feel comfortable. The big cat jumped out of the little guy's arms and ran to a stone pillar where it could bask in the sun and lay down. Looking at its lazy expression, it looked more and more like a real cat. After a while, Lin Xian appeared at the stairs of the cruise ship with a phone in her hand. She looked down, then waved to Chin-shi and his daughter and shouted, "Chin-shi, come here." After the previous few contacts, the little fellow had completely forgotten the unpleasant incident when she first met Lin Xian. So when Chin-shi came to Lin Xian with her in his arms, the little fellow took the initiative to call out to Lin Xian sweetly, "Big sister. Nian Nian is so good. Come and let Big Sister hug you, okay?" "Okay." The little fellow reached out and then moved from Chin-shi's arms to Lin Xian's. At this time, the big cat, who was squatting on the stone pillar, also saw the situation here, so it quickly jumped down from the stone pillar, turned into a black shadow, and jumped on Qianxi's shoulder in an instant. "Oh, you have a pet?" Lin Xian glanced at the big cat that suddenly appeared, and was immediately attracted by its obedience, so she reached out and touched the big cat's head. The big cat narrowed its eyes slightly, and after Lin Xian took her hand away, it softly meowed, as if it was greeting Lin Xian. Didn't they say that children can't have pets at home? There seems to be such a saying, but the big cat is different from other pets. It likes to be clean. Qianxi explained with a smile. Lin Xian didn't understand this, so she didn't ask anymore. Star Dream was very big, and Fang Lei's wedding would be held on the top deck, so Lin Xian took Qianxi straight to the top deck. In order to have a perfect wedding, Fang Lei had signed a contract with the China Ocean Group as early as half a year ago, booking Star Dream for 3 days. Star Dream had a total of 1751 cabins, 26 elevators, and 18 decks, 14 of which were available for tourists to move around. The ship was so big, so of course, it had a lot of supporting facilities. For main restaurants, 2 special restaurants, and 21 bars were just the basic facilities. In addition, there was a bowling alley, a sports field, a swimming pool, a spa, and a children's park. It really had everything, and it was very luxurious. Qianxi followed Lin Xian to the top deck, and the first thing that came into view was a huge open-air swimming pool. He looked at the surrounding environment, then looked at the exquisite swimming pool, and couldn't help but sigh. Fang Lei usually doesn't talk much, and she looks like a cold goddess. I didn't expect her to love romance so much. You really can't judge a book by its cover. Hearing this, Lin Xian rolled her eyes at him and said, "Romance is a woman's nature. If I had the money, I would definitely have a romantic wedding like hers in the future. That way, I wouldn't have lived in vain." Well, maybe it's really because poverty has limited my imagination, so before I came here, I didn't think that a wedding could be held on a cruise ship. The two chatted as they walked across the deck. At this time, Lin Xian suddenly thought of something, and turned to look at Qianxi and asked, "Hey, by the way, you and Yingying didn't have a wedding, right?" After saying that, before Qianxi could answer, she covered her mouth and said apologetically, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have mentioned this." "It's okay." Qianxi smiled and shook his head, indicating that he didn't mind. However, when Lin Xian mentioned it, it reminded him of some memories, and he couldn't help but sigh. "Yes, Ninian is already 4 years old, but I still owe Yingying a romantic wedding. In fact, 5 years ago, Qianxi also fantasized about what his wedding with Yingying would be like. Unfortunately, Yingying didn't seem to like this topic, so Qianxi never had an in-depth conversation with her on this topic. Therefore, he didn't know what Yingying was looking forward to their wedding. Qianxi looked at the busy wedding staff in front of him and couldn't help but be a little lost in thought. Maybe, compared to a grand and romantic wedding, Yingying actually preferred to spend time with each other in a simple and peaceful way. Drinking wine and growing old together. Chapter 64. Love was a matter of 2 people. Marriage was a matter of 2 families. Since family was mentioned, the parents' suggestions were naturally important. Therefore, even if Fang Lei was unwilling, she had to compromise in the end. The wedding ceremony could be done in a pure Western style, but the reception of guests and the banquet afterwards must be done according to Chinese standards. Among the 4 ancient civilizations, ancient Egypt, ancient India, and ancient Babylon had long been annihilated in the long river of history because of the invasion of foreign tribes. As the only surviving one, Huaxia not only had a long history of cultural inheritance, but also maintained the continuity of civilization after being invaded by foreign tribes and maintained the long-term vitality of the Chinese civilization. The reason was that Huaxia people had an indelible national spirit in their bones. Over the years, with the continuous infiltration of Western culture, more and more young people began to like the Western festival, but did not care about traditional festivals such as Tomb Sweeping Day and Mid-Autumn Festival. There were 2 sides to everything in the world. It was not necessarily wrong, and it was not unilateral to blame others for worshipping foreign things. Thanks to Fang Lei, Chen Shi and the little fellow also enjoyed the luxury suite on the cruise ship. Although it was not as good as the 5-star hotel they lived in Immerse, it had a different experience. The little fellow was very excited. This was the first time she had been on a cruise ship and the first time she had attended someone's wedding. So, in the middle of the night, she finally fell asleep under the comfort of Chen Shi. The next morning. Because in Western culture, if the groom saw the wedding dress before the ceremony, it would be regarded as inauspicious, so Western weddings did not have the part of picking up the bride. Therefore, Fang Lei and her fiancé, Wang Shiwu, had been living on the cruise ship since last night, quietly waiting for the wedding to begin. Fang Lei's father was a college student in the 1980s. After graduation, he entered the state unit. Later, he caught up with the business boom in the 1990s, so he resolutely resigned from his position as a cadre of state-owned enterprises and came to Zhonghai alone to work hard. It took him decades to finally lay a large foundation. Fang Lei's father was highly educated and cultivated. He could be said to be the model of a generation of scholarly businessmen, so he was very popular in the circle of rich people in Zhonghai. Today was his only daughter's big day, so many rich and powerful people would come to support. Early in the morning, countless luxury cars appeared at the dock. Father Fang and Mother Fang both felt that the Western style was not desirable, so no matter how much Fang Lei complained, they were not moved. Instead, they changed into brand new formal attire early in the morning and stood at the dock to personally welcome every guest. When an ordinary family got married, they would usually arrange 30 to 40 tables. Some families would arrange 80 to 100 tables. However, for a wealthy family like the Fang family, who had a wide network of connections and friends all over the world, there would naturally be more guests. Due to the limited number of seats on the top deck, not everyone could get an invitation of the highest standard and go to the top deck to watch the ceremony. As for the guests who were unable to go to the top floor, they were arranged to stay on the lower deck and watch the live broadcast through the big screen. Guests arrived at the cruise ship one after another at 9 o'clock in the morning. Fang Qiu's father welcomed every guest with a smile. Suddenly, his assistant ran to his side and whispered to him, "Mr. Fang, the two Mr. Nings from the Ocean Group are here." "Oh? Old Ning is here too? Wasn't he in poor health recently?" Fang Qiu's father was a little surprised. He quickly looked in the direction his assistant was pointing and saw Ning Zhonghua in the crowd. Therefore, he immediately walked out from behind the reception area and laughed. "Old Ning, what a rare guest. Let's have a few drinks later." As he spoke, he walked up to Ning Zhonghua and gave him a warm hug. Some of the guests around did not know Ning Zhonghua, but after seeing Fang Qiu's father's action, they immediately paid attention and secretly observed Ning Zhonghua, wanting to remember him firmly in their hearts. After the hug, Ning Zhonghua immediately said with a smile, "Old Fang, you're treating me as an outsider. Your precious daughter is getting married, so of course I have to come and support her. Hey, I heard that you were hospitalized some time ago, right? How are you? Are you feeling better?" "I'm fine. I'm in good health now." Fang Qiu's father and Ning Zhonghua exchanged a few polite words, then his eyes fell on Ning Qiudong. "Oh, Qiudong has become prettier again. When are you going to invite me to the wedding?" In order not to steal the bride's limelight, Ning Qiudong specially chose a rather dignified and low-key black gown today. Hearing this, Ning Qiudong smiled. Before she could say anything, Ning Zhonghua laughed and said, "It's still early, still early. My precious daughter is not as sensible as your daughter. She's eager to excel and looks down on all men in the world. I'm so worried. Children and grandchildren have their own lives. As a father, you can't be too nosy." The three of them chatted for a while before Ning Zhonghua wheeled Fang Qiu's father back to the reception area. After signing his name on the guest list, Ning Zhonghua laughed and said, "Old Fang, you have a lot of things to do today, so don't worry about us. We'll go up first. You can go greet the other guests. When you're done, we'll meet again." "Okay, then I'll be rude." Fang Qiu's father nodded, then waved his hand to call over his assistant. "Xiao Sun, bring President Ning up first. The assistant nodded. Just as he was about to invite the father and daughter of the Ning family to board the ship, Fang Qiu's father stopped him and whispered in his ear, "First row." The assistant nodded calmly. After boarding the ship, he led the father and daughter of the Ning family to the other side of the tunnel. They took the elevator directly to the top deck. Chen Shi took advantage of the time to bring the little girl to the top deck. At this time, many guests were already seated. Melodious light music echoed above the deck. There were white flowers and exquisite decorations all around. As time went by, the orange-red sun slowly rose from the east, gradually blooming with golden light. Amidst the sea breeze, the atmosphere became more and more lively. Chen Shi held the invitation. When he realized that there was no seat number on the invitation, he casually sat down in the last row of the VIP seats. After sitting down, the little guy immediately began to move restlessly from left to right. She was so excited. Sister said that when the wedding was about to start, she could go backstage and change into a beautiful white gown. Why didn't she let her change in advance? In fact, it was because Lin Xian was worried that she would dirty the gown, so she didn't give the gown to the little girl. Lin Xian was Fang Lei's main bridesmaid. As Wang Lu was already married, she was not a bridesmaid. Chen Shi looked around. Suddenly, he saw a familiar face in the crowd. Li Xiuwen. At this time, Li Xiuwen also noticed Chen Shi. He seemed a little surprised to see Chen Shi here. However, out of courtesy, he took the initiative to nod at Chen Shi. Seeing this, Chen Shi nodded back at him. However, at this time, Li Xiuwen suddenly froze. Because he remembered something. Therefore, after hesitating for a while, Li Xiuwen immediately walked toward Chen Shi. "Mr. Chen, how are you? Asterisk 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 Thank you to Big Boss, still playing, for the 34,500 reward. Old man, don't rush me to update, I'm already crying, I'm sincerely recommending something good to you guys. I read it every day anyway. The microtheater allows you to watch the complete version of Steel Alchemist in 2 hours. Not only does it save time, but it also allows you to fully understand the plot and essence of the manga. It's highly recommended. I've watched this anime many years ago, but I've almost forgotten it. It's a masterpiece with 0 negative reviews. In addition, he has commentaries for classic anime such as Fate, The Holy Grail War, and Eva. It allows people like me who want to watch anime, but find it too long and wordy, to quickly understand the plot. Other than anime, there are also commentaries for classic movies and TV series. Chapter 65. How have you been? Chen Shi nodded in response. To be honest, he was not familiar with Li Xiuwen. And that night at Sally's restaurant, he even injured Zhao Yuan in front of Li Xiuwen. Regardless of whether Zhao Yuan was familiar with Li Xiuwen or not, at least Zhao Yuan was called by Li Xiuwen. Therefore, when Chen Shi injured Zhao Yuan, it was already disrespectful to Li Xiuwen. Therefore, Chen Shi did not think that Li Xiuwen would have a good impression of him. However, after the two met, Li Xiuwen's reaction was somewhat out of his expectations. What's Mr. Chen been busy with recently? After greeting Chen Shi, Li Xiuwen sat beside Chen Shi and asked with a smile. Taking care of the child. After saying that, Chen Shi rubbed the little one's head. His behavior immediately made the little one unhappy. She quickly reached out and patted Chen Shi's hand. Then, she gently covered her hair with both hands and said in a coquettish voice, "Papa, you're so annoying. Don't touch my hair." The little one's hairstyle today was not simple. Chen Shi woke up early in the morning and followed the steps on the internet step by step to make her a flower girl hairstyle. It was very complicated, but it really looked good, so the little one liked it very much. Really? Ha! Li Xiuwen could not help but laugh dryly. He had already seen Chen Shi's information from Zhao Yuan, but his intuition told him that Chen Shi was not simple. If he was really as simple as the information described, how could he explain the blank 5 years in between? It was very rare in today's society for a person to mysteriously lose 5 years' worth of information and not be able to find anything. It was also because of this that when Zhao Yuan wanted to seek revenge on Qin Shi, he was not optimistic about Zhao Yuan and even wanted to advise Zhao Yuan not to pursue the matter anymore. Unfortunately, Zhao Yuan wanted to hurt Lin Xian, and because of this, he angered Li Xiuwen. The two parted on bad terms, so Li Xiuwen did not know whether Zhao Yuan had sought revenge on Qin Shi or not. Following this period of investigation, Li Xiuwen realized that things were getting more and more complicated. Because Zhao Yuan had gone missing. The day after the two of them met, she disappeared. Even the Zhao family did not know where Zhao Yuan had gone. It was as if he had completely disappeared from the face of the earth. No matter how one looked at it, there was something strange about this matter. Hence, the moment Li Xiuwen saw Qin Shi, he could no longer suppress the doubts in his heart. He pretended to ask casually, "Oh, by the way, I wanted to ask you, did Zhao Yuan come to you again after that?" Hearing this, Qin Shi did not immediately answer. Instead, he glanced at Li Xiuwen without batting an eyelid. Seeing this, Li Xiuwen immediately chuckled and explained, "Zhao Yuan and I can be considered acquaintances. Mr. Chen, you are Lin Xian's friend. If he still finds trouble with you, I can be a peacemaker and have a good talk with him. After all, it's better to squash enmity rather than keep it alive." After hearing Li Xiuwen's words, Qin Shi shook his head and said calmly, "He didn't find me." "Oh," Li Xiuwen nodded, then said somewhat unwillingly, "All right, if you need any help, just let me know. I don't have your number yet. If you don't mind, let me know." As he spoke, Li Xiuwen took out his phone and waited for Qin Shi to give him the number. But at this moment, a voice suddenly came from behind them. "Mr. Chen?" Qin Shi looked back and saw Ning Zhonghua and Ning Chudong coming up behind him, side by side. "Mr. Ning?" "Huh, what a coincidence, Mr. Chen." Ning Zhonghua laughed as he came to Qin Shi's side, then sighed. "We are really fated to meet at someone else's wedding. This time, I didn't arrange it on purpose." After saying this, Ning Zhonghua laughed loudly, as if meeting Qin Shi here was something to be happy about. "Mr. Chen, hello." Ning Chudong looked at Qin Shi with a complicated expression, then lowered her head to greet him. She had already heard about Zhang Jiada from Ning Zhonghua, so she truly understood how powerful Qin Shi was. Therefore, when she spoke, her tone and expression naturally carried a little bit of respect. Ning Zhonghua's sudden appearance caught Li Xiuwen off guard. They were all in the same circle, so how could he not know Ning Zhonghua and Ning Chudong? He also had his own shipping company, but compared to the Ning family's ocean group, it was really a small business. Many of his company's orders were even leftovers from the ocean shipping group, and then they were casually outsourced to him. "Uncle Ning, Sister Ning, hello." After Ning Chudong and Qin Shi finished talking, Li Xiuwen quickly stood up and chose a very suitable time to appear in front of Ning Zhonghua. Ning Zhonghua seemed to have seen Li Xiuwen at this time. He turned his head and laughed. "Oh. It's Xiuwen? Where's your dad? Why don't I see him? My dad is still abroad, so I can only come on his behalf today." Oh, okay." Ning Zhonghua nodded, as if he had no intention of talking to him in depth. Seeing this, Li Xiuwen could not help but feel anxious. Although the ocean shipping group had been handed over to Ning Chudong, Ning Zhonghua's words still had a decisive effect. In fact, Li Xiuwen's relationship with the Ning family was quite deep. The reason why he was named as one of the top 10 youths in Zhonghai was mainly because of his shipping company. This company was built by him, and the reason why it developed so quickly was because of Ning Zhonghua's help. A small company with no qualifications, in just a few years, through the outsourcing of the ocean shipping group, became one of the top 10 shipping companies in Zhonghai. What did it rely on? It relied on face. It was his dad's face. Ning Chudong looked down on Li Xiuwen, because she felt that this person lived too superficially. Although they were all rich second-generation heirs living in the shadow of their fathers, Ning Chudong could take charge of the entire ocean shipping group on her own. Li Xiuwen, on the other hand, only knew how to deal with the media in his empty company, busy with magazines and newspapers, and promote his name as one of the top 10 youths in Zhonghai. His so-called projects were, in fact, all obtained through connections. Therefore, after Ning Qiudong took charge of the ocean shipping group, she started to reduce the number of outsourced projects, intentionally or unintentionally, in the name of maximizing profits. This move made Li Xiuwen's life a little difficult, so he had already started to plan to wait for his dad to come back to China, and bring him along to visit Ning Zhonghua. He did not expect to see Ning Zhonghua here today, so he was caught off guard. Li Xiuwen was still thinking of ways to strike up a conversation with Ning Zhonghua, but at this moment, Lin Xian, wearing a white off-shoulder bridesmaid dress, suddenly appeared. She stood by the railing on the deck, waved at Chen Shi from afar, and shouted, "Chen Shi, over here, quickly bring Nian over to change. The wedding is about to begin. Thank you to Katatsumuri for the 10,000 reward. Old man, don't rush me too much, really, indeed, your urging can affect me. If it wasn't for the fact that I really couldn't write, I would have done it long ago. If I were to write the traditional face-slapping chapter of Nian being pushed down, I would write at least 10 chapters, the face-slapping wouldn't stop at all." Chapter 66. Just as Ning Zhonghua was about to send Li Xiuwen away and sit down to chat with Chen Shi, Lin Xian appeared. Her appearance immediately attracted the attention of many people. Lin Xian was very beautiful today. Although she had already put on the simplest bridesmaid makeup in order not to steal the bride's limelight and wore the simplest white dress, it still could not hide her beauty. "Excuse me, I'll excuse myself for a moment." Chen Shi stood up, nodded slightly at Ning Zhonghua, and walked towards Lin Xian with the little fellow in his arms. "You go ahead, we'll talk later." Ning Zhonghua hurriedly stepped aside and gestured for him to go ahead. Li Xiuwen was confused by his actions. Looking at this situation, Ning Zhonghua's relationship with Chen Shi was much better than he had imagined. Also, Li Xiuwen had a feeling. Ning Zhonghua seemed to be lowering his status in front of Chen Shi. What kind of show was this? Li Xiuwen had not recovered from his shock, but Ning Zhonghua had already walked away. When Li Xiuwen finally reacted and wanted to chase after Ning Zhonghua to chat, Ning Zhonghua had already walked towards the first row of the VIP seats under the guidance of his assistant. That place was not a place anyone could sit, so Li Xiuwen had no choice but to stop in his tracks. Then, he turned to look in the direction that Chen Shi had left. He saw Lin Xian carrying the little fellow and chatting happily with Chen Shi as they walked towards the staircase. Chen Shi carried the little fellow to Lin Xian. After sizing her up, he teased, "You're so beautiful today, don't steal the bride's limelight." Hearing this, Lin Xian could not help but spit at Chen Shi. Her face was a little red, and her tone was a little shy. She complained, "Don't talk nonsense, there's only one main character today, I'm not as pretty as her." Although that was what she said, Lin Xian felt that Chen Shi's words made sense, so she decided to touch up her makeup later. For example, she would make her nose shorter and her skin tone darker. This was what a bridesmaid should do. "Sister, hug." This was the first time the little fellow had asked her to hug him, so Lin Xian was stunned for a moment, and then quickly took the little fellow from Chen Shi's arms. After she hugged the little fellow immediately wrapped his arms around her neck and leaned his head on her snow-white shoulders. The reason why the little girl was so enthusiastic was actually not because of the little dress that belonged to her. Girls liked beautiful things, even children were no exception. Was not an exception. So after wearing it once yesterday, the little fellow was completely mesmerized. Because Lin Xian was dressed as the main bridesmaid, when the guests saw her, they would stand to the side and make way for her. At the same time, they would smile and nod at her. The two of them walked side by side on the deck for a while. After seeing that there were not many people around, Lin Xian pretended to be nonchalant and asked, "Who is that woman in black? Why do I feel like I've seen her before?" Chen Shi thought for a moment before realizing that she was referring to Ning Qiudong, so he introduced her. "She's Ning Qiudong, Li Xiuwen also knows her, so I guess you've seen her before." Hearing this, Lin Xian was silent. When she sent Qin home that day, she saw some things with her own eyes. In order to see the woman's face clearly, Lin Xian especially waited until the woman left before leaving. So she could not be wrong. The woman in the black dress was the woman who suddenly knelt in front of Qin that night. After thinking for a while, Lin Xian continued to ask, Li Xiuwen's friends are not ordinary people, didn't you just return to Zhonghai? How did you get to know them? Because of a misunderstanding, I became friends with his father, so I went to their house a few times. After hearing his words, Lin Xian secretly glanced at Qin. He was not telling the truth. But since Qin did not want to say, she naturally did not ask any more. Thinking of this, she could not help but snort lightly, and then did not want to talk to Qin anymore. Carrying the little fellow, she quickly walked into a room around the corner. Wait here, I'll bring her to change. Okay. Bam! The sound of the door closing was a little loud. Qin did not seem to notice Lin Xian's strange behavior. After seeing her close the door, he stood by the railing and looked down at the scenery below. After waiting for a while, Lin Xian still had not come out, but the sound system on the cruise ship rang. The band on the top deck began to play. The string quartet performed a soothing and melodious classical music. After the guests on all levels of the cruise ship heard the music, they stopped the noise and sat quietly in their seats, waiting for the wedding to begin. About 10 minutes later, the cruise ship set sail with a deep and drawn-out whistle. The flower girl was not the bridesmaid, so the cuter the better. So when Lin Xian came out with the little fellow again, the little fellow had changed into a top Israeli wedding dress brand, Galia. Lahav custom-made white puffy gauze dress. She was wearing a pair of white princess shoes and a garland made of real flowers on her head. She looked like a little angel who had descended from the heavens to the mortal world. Nian is so cute. Come, let daddy kiss you. Seeing his daughter's cute little face, Qin was suddenly overjoyed and quickly stepped forward to kiss her. However, the little fellow was now proud. Before Qin's mouth could get close to her, the little fellow pressed her forehead and pushed him away. She pouted and said with disgust, No. Papa is annoying. You'll dirty me. After that, she buried her head in Lin Xian's shoulder again. Qin was a little speechless. He was actually disliked by his baby daughter. Stop it, the wedding is about to begin. Go back and sit down. I have to take Nian to find Lei Lei. See you later. After that, Lin Xian took the little fellow to Fang Lei's room. Seeing this, Qin could only shrug helplessly and then walk toward the deck. The deck was packed with people, and the VIP seats had long been filled. Many children did not want to watch the broadcast, so they did not listen to the adults at all and ran to the top deck to see the live scene. Since they were guests, it was naturally impossible to chase them out of the top deck, so there were more and more people on the top deck. Qin didn't like to join in the crowd, but in order to take a few beautiful photos of the little girl as a souvenir, he had to apologize while trying his best to squeeze into the crowd. It wasn't until he stepped on the red carpet that he finally stopped. The red carpet crossed the entire deck. On one side was the flower arch of the wedding stage, and on the other side was the passage for the bride and groom. Suddenly, the music stopped. Then, a wedding officiant dressed as a priest slowly stepped on the red carpet and walked toward the wedding stage. After the priest finished his speech, the music started again. But this time, it was the wedding march that was playing. The groom, Wang Shiwu, slowly appeared at the end of the passage under the priest's introduction. After the groom stood on the stage, the best man and the bridesmaid walked up the passage one by one. After the best man and bridesmaid were in place, Qin finally perked up. Because the little fellow was going to appear. Others' focus was on the bride and groom, but his focus was all on the flower girl. If he could, he would probably laugh out loud without hesitation. That's my daughter. This was the pride of a father. Thank you to Mosafanzi for the 10,000 reward. The first group number of this book, 5117933123. Chapter 67. She looked at the entrance of the passage nervously. Suddenly, the little girl appeared. She was like a cute little angel, wearing a white fluffy gauze dress, and suddenly appeared in front of everyone's eyes. The little girl's expression was a little nervous, and her little face was very tight. Perhaps she didn't expect there to be so many people here. This was the grandest occasion she had ever experienced in her life. The red carpet in front of her led to the wedding stage, and both sides were densely packed with people. The little girl was only a little more than a meter tall, so the adults on both sides were like two high palace walls, blocking all of her sight. As far as she could only see the other side of the stage from the end of the red carpet. Because there were too many people, she couldn't see where Papa was, and she couldn't help but feel more nervous. She thought this was a fun thing to do. But it wasn't until she stood here that she realized everything was different from what her sister said. Then, the little girl's mind went blank because of nervousness. Whose child is this? So cute. That's right, if only my daughter was as beautiful as her. This young lady is truly a great beauty in the making. Look, our family is blushing when looking at this girl. Brat, how old are you? She stood in the crowd, listening to everyone talking about the little girl who suddenly appeared, and suddenly felt very proud. He slightly turned his body, hoping that the little girl could see him. But because there were too many people, the little girl didn't notice him. The little girl stood at the entrance of the passage for at least 5 seconds. At this time, a staff member of the wedding company quietly urged her behind, Nyan, go, just walk to the stage on the opposite side. The little girl tilted her head and glanced at the staff member. After taking a deep breath, she slowly took the first step. She sprinkled flowers every 3 steps, and before she reached the end, she had to sprinkle all the petals in the basket. This was her task. It sounded very simple, and during the rehearsal last night, she had easily walked through it twice. But when it was actually carried out, the little girl found that she actually forgot how to walk. How should she walk? It was just like writing a word. After writing it, he felt that the word shouldn't be like this. The little fellow's feet were very stiff, and he even began to wonder how far he should take each step. When she saw her expression, he knew that she was nervous. A 4-year-old child walking alone on the red carpet under the watchful eyes of thousands of people, one could imagine how much pressure she was under right now. She kept waving at her, but the little girl didn't even look at him and kept walking forward. Seeing this, she immediately kicked the big cat sitting at his feet and whispered, go to the front and lead the way for her, but don't walk on the carpet. The big cat was very smart. It immediately understood what she meant, so it immediately jumped in the direction of the little guy. The little guy was short to begin with. When he saw the big cat running over from the side of the carpet, he immediately noticed it. Meow. The big cat softly called out to the little guy. This made the little guy's heart calm down a lot, and her footsteps finally became more natural. She walked towards the stage while scattering flowers, and the big cat was 1 or 2 meters in front of her, leading her along the red carpet. Maybe it was because all her attention was on the big cat, so when the little guy passed by she didn't even hear she calling her. After walking about 2/3 of the way, the little guy's tense little face finally showed a natural smile, and it was obvious that she had relaxed a lot. But at this moment, an accident happened. Just as the little guy was counting her steps and scattering flowers as she walked, she suddenly lost her balance and fell heavily to the ground. As if replaying the scene from yesterday, the way she fell was exactly the same as yesterday. But this time, the big cat didn't cover her in time. Amidst the exclamations of the crowd, the little guy fell heavily to the ground, and the petals in the flower basket scattered all over the ground. And her sudden fall was instantly shown to everyone through the broadcast on the big screen. Meow. When the big cat heard the movement, it immediately turned around and ran to Nyan's side. She also reacted and wanted to go forward to help her up. But after hesitating for a moment, she chose to call back the big cat, and at the same time, he transmitted his voice to Nyan, baby, don't be afraid. Stand up. Daddy is behind you. Stand up and be brave. You've already walked so far, stand up and keep walking. Just hold on a little longer, and you'll reach the end. Perhaps it was because of Chen Shi's voice transmission, the little guy finally came back to his senses. She quickly got up from the ground and picked up the flower basket again. Under the accompaniment of the music, she continued to walk toward the stage not far away. Although this fall didn't hurt her skin, it did hurt a little. So, the little guy could only limp towards the stage. At this time, Lin Xian also walked to the bottom of the stage, stood at the end of the red carpet, and opened his hands to wait for her arrival. But unfortunately, she hadn't finished walking, but there were no more petals in the flower basket. The little guy remembered her mission, so even if there were no more petals, she still made the gesture of sprinkling the flowers. Although it was only air that was sprinkled, as she walked, the little guy's tears suddenly fell. Just like that, she silently walked on the red carpet while crying. The cameraman was very smart. After the little guy fell, he immediately moved the camera to the bride, who was about to appear at the end of the aisle. Finally, Ninian walked to the front of the stage. Lin Xian hugged her, then carried her around to the temporary lounge behind the stage. The moment they left, the crowd on the deck suddenly burst into loud cheers. The bride appeared. And the scene of her falling, no one seemed to have seen at all. In the lounge, Lin Xian put the little guy on a chair, then gently wiped away her tears. "Baby, does it hurt? Don't cry, it's okay." The little guy didn't cry out loud. But at this moment, she finally couldn't hold it in anymore. Just as Lin Xian was showing concern for her, the little guy suddenly jumped into Lin Xian's arms, then cried out in a sobbing voice, "Sister, I'm sorry, I screwed up. It's okay, baby, you've already done very well, don't cry, don't cry." Lin Xian hugged the little guy tightly, constantly comforting her. She was very sad and blamed herself, so she kept repeating, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." At this moment, Chen Shi finally rushed over. Lin Xian glanced at Chen Shi, then motioned for Chen Shi to come over. She was the main bridesmaid, so she couldn't just leave. Lin Xian gently pushed the little guy into Chen Shi's arms. At this moment, the little guy finally saw Chen Shi. So, she cried even harder. Chapter 68. "Well, baby, don't cry." Chen Shi gently patted the little fellow on the back, and then gently comforted her. "It's normal to fall. You don't have 4 legs like the big cat. Daddy often falls down. Didn't you fall down once yesterday? Why didn't you cry yesterday, but today you cry like a little kitten?" Hearing this, the little fellow raised her head from Chen Shi's arms, and then sobbed and sadly blamed herself. "It's my fault. I was the flower girl for my sister, but I fell down and the petals were all gone. I'm so sad. I'm so sad." The more the little fellow spoke, the sadder she became, and her snot and tears could not stop flowing. Chen Shi quickly took out a few pieces of paper and wiped her face. Then he held the little fellow in his arms and comforted her. "It's okay, it's okay. Sister won't blame you, and Daddy won't blame you. It's not terrible to fall down. What's terrible is not having the courage to stand up, understand?" The little fellow did not speak, but her crying was much softer. Seeing this, Chen Shi gently patted her on the back again and said softly, "You're still young, and you'll definitely encounter different kinds of difficulties in the future. Remember Daddy's words, don't be afraid when you encounter difficulties in the future, and don't cry, but face them with strength and courage. In this way, you won't fall in the same place for the second time, okay?" It seemed that his comforting words were effective. The little fellow lay in his arms and gradually stopped crying. On the stage, separated by a wall, the bride and groom said, "I do," to each other under the inquiry of the officiator. Behind the stage, the little fellow lay in Chen Shi's arms, nodded gently and said, "Okay." The cruise ship slowly sailed away, and several seagulls flew over the cruise ship. Suddenly, there was an earth-shattering cheer on the cruise ship. That was the heartfelt blessing of everyone to the newlyweds. The ceremony was over, and the host asked everyone to move to the dining room through the sound system. Then, Lin Xian rushed to the lounge in a hurry. She turned the corner, and just as she entered the lounge, she saw Chen Shi standing on the bow of the ship, holding the little fellow's arms with both hands and holding her high in the air. "Papa. I'm flying. Woo-woo, I'm flying." The cruise ship cut through the waves like a pair of scissors, cutting a long crack in the sea. The little fellow was suspended in mid-air, but after looking down at the sea beneath her feet, she wasn't afraid at all. Instead, she was dancing with excitement. "Chen Shi. What are you doing?" Seeing this scene, Lin Xian was scared out of her wits. She hurriedly ran to Chen Shi's side to take the little guy. "What kind of father are you? Do you know how dangerous this is? This was a cruise ship. If you fall down, you'll immediately be smashed to pieces." After hugging the little fellow tightly in his arms, Lin Xian glanced below the bow with lingering fear. Then, he gave Chen Shi a fierce kick. But Chen Shi's leg felt like it was made of iron, and her high heels were already squeezing her toes tightly. This bump caused her foot to hurt like hell. Therefore, she couldn't help but curse angrily, F***ck. Chen Shi looked at her helplessly. Just as he was about to explain, Lin Xian had already carried the little fellow and walked quickly to the restaurant. "Hey, that's my daughter, get lost. How can you take care of your daughter like this?" Chen Shi stood at the bow of the ship and shouted helplessly. However, what responded to him was Lin Xian's angry roar. In Restaurant 1. Father Feng invited Ning Zhonghua to take a seat. The people at this table were not relatives or friends. They were all well-known rich and powerful people in Zhonghai. Ning Zhonghua exchanged a few pleasantries with Father Feng, then greeted some of his acquaintances who were already at the table. Then, he quietly called Ning Qiutong and ordered, "Go find Mr. Chen and see if you can invite him over." Hearing this, Ning Qiutong couldn't help but frown and ask, "He's not even a member of this circle. Is it appropriate for us to invite him over?" As she spoke, she motioned for Ning Zhonghua to look at Father Feng, the host. "Listen to Dad, go. Being on good terms with him will do us no harm. No matter how rich we are, we need to be alive to spend it, right? Mr. Chen is a hidden expert, but as long as he is willing to do something, then there will be a day when his name will spread far and wide. When that time comes, they won't go directly to Mr. Chen. They will have to go through me. Do you understand what I mean?" "I understand, but I don't think he will come." Ning Qiutong said this, but she still turned and walked out. Inviting him over was just to express their attitude. As for whether he would come or not, that was another question. Ning Qiutong walked slowly from the deepest part of the venue to the door, carefully scanning the guests at each table. Finally, she found Chen Shi in a corner. Lin Xian was the main bridesmaid, so after carrying the little girl into the dining room, she had to return the little girl to Chen Shi. Then, she changed into the toast dress with Feng Lei. Chen Shi's table was very interesting. It seemed to be a table for women and children. At the 12 tables, he was the only man. The others were all women and children. Ning Qiutong stood not far away, listening to Chen Shi and a few women talking about children's education. She couldn't help but feel a little absent-minded. 100,000 yuan was not even enough for her to buy a bag. It was also because of this 100,000 yuan that she almost killed Ning Zhonghua. Therefore, after this incident, Ning Qiutong's personality changed a lot. In the past, she was the female president who had just taken charge of the Ocean Group. Her whole body exuded a sharp aura, like a sharp blade. Her imposing manner was enough to make everyone unconsciously bow their heads in front of her. She always meant what she said. As long as she made a judgment, she would absolutely believe in her own judgment. It wasn't until that day, when she helplessly knelt in front of Chen Shi, that she finally realized where she had gone wrong. Maybe this was a good thing. She was born with a silver spoon in her mouth. After all, she had to go through some things to transform and become more perfect. After hesitating for a moment, Ning Qiutong came behind Chen Shi and said softly, "Mr. Chen." Chen Shi looked back and saw that it was Ning Qiudong, so he asked, "Miss Ning, what's the matter?" "My father wants to invite you to his table. Do you think it's okay?" Ning Qiudong pointed to the deepest part of the venue. Seeing this, Chen Shi immediately shook his head and said politely, "No, it's okay. I have a child here, so it's not that troublesome." Emichim. "Okay, take your time." After Chen Shi rejected her, Ning Qiudong didn't say anything more. She nodded at him gently and went back. After Ning Qiudong left, a woman next to Chen Shi asked with a smirk, "Young man, who's that girl?" "She's pretty." "A friend," Chen Shi replied politely. "A friend? You have such a beautiful female friend?" The woman didn't seem to believe it. Before Chen Shi had time to explain, she said with a smirk, "That bridesmaid is also your friend, right?" TSK, young people these days are amazing." Her words, which were full of meaning, immediately caused the other big sisters at the table to laugh. Seeing this, Chen Shi could only smile and say, "She's really a friend. Don't tell me you all think that there's no such thing as a simple friendship between a man and a woman?" "No." Hearing this, the big sisters immediately replied in unison. "You guys are so shallow." After saying this, Chen Shi also laughed with them. The women were just joking, so Chen Shi didn't take it to heart. Because in reality, his relationship with Ning Qiudong could not even be considered as a friend. Chapter 69. During lunch, Chen Shi talked with several older sisters about how to educate children, which gave Chen Shi a lot of inspiration. For example, don't hold the child all the time, and let her walk around more. Children must walk more, and walking is good for joint development. At the same time, exercise will also increase the child's lung capacity. The stronger the respiratory organ, the stronger the vitality naturally. In addition, more sun exposure to prevent osteoporosis, which is conducive to the healthy growth of children. Although there was Chen Shi, and Nianyan's body absolutely could not have any problems, the older sister's advice was still very pertinent. These older sisters were also experienced. In just the time it took to eat a meal, they could see how much Chen Shi doted on the little guy, so they earnestly advised him to learn how to properly refuse. It was good to spoil his daughter, but he couldn't spoil her too much. Blindly spoiling and doting would harm the child. The cruise ship was still in the process of cruising and would not return until dinner. So after lunch, Chen Shi took the little fellow back to the suite and let the big cat play hide-and-seek with the little fellow in the room. And he turned on the TV to watch. "Where are we going, Dad?" This was also the older sister's advice. Otherwise, Chen Shi would not have known that there was such a variety show about parent-child interaction in the world. Some of the children were older than Nianyan, and some were younger than her. As soon as the theme song was played, the little fellow had already heard the sound and ran over. Then she sat next to Chen Shi with the big cat in her arms and watched with him. After watching for a while, the little fellow pointed to a little boy who was being difficult on the TV and giggled, "Papa, that brother is so silly. He's crying, so shameful." Looking at her complacent look, she had probably forgotten that she was crying in the morning. Hearing this, Chen Shi couldn't help poking her little face and said with a smile, "You know how to be shy, then don't be like this brother in the future, crying all the time." "I'm not going to cry." The little fellow was still so proud. The father and daughter chatted and joked while watching TV. At this time, a knock suddenly sounded. "Sister is here. I'll open the door." Lin Xian said that she would come and play with her after she was done, so the little girl immediately jumped off the sofa and ran to open the door. However, when she opened the door, she didn't see Sister Lin Xian, but the uncle she had seen a few times before. "Uncle, who are you looking for?" The little fellow stood behind the door and poked her head out, asking knowingly. Standing outside the door were Ning Zhonghua and Ning Qiudong. They had met this morning. Ning Zhonghua lowered his head and glanced at her. He knew that the little fellow was pretending to be strange, so he laughed and said, "Little darling, I'm here to find your father. Can you let us in?" "Oh," the little fellow nodded, but did not move aside. Instead, she looked back at Chen Shi in the room. Chen Shi had heard the movement at the door, so he sat up and waved to her, motioning her to come back. The little fellow jumped into Chen Shi's arms, and then said in a muffled voice, "Papa, that old uncle is here to see you again." "I know." Chen Shi pinched her little face, and then shouted to the door, "Mr. Ning, the child is not sensible. Please come in." Hearing this, Ning Zhonghua gently pushed the door open, then looked at Chen Shi and laughed. "Mr. Chen, am I disturbing you?" "It's all right. Please sit down." Chen Shi pointed to the sofa next to him. After they sat down, he asked, "What can I do for you?" Ning Zhonghua smiled. After sorting out his words, he slowly said, "When we were eating just now, I talked to a few friends about you. This, you don't mind, do you?" Chen Shi shook his head with a smile and replied, "It's all right. I don't mind." That's good, that's good." Ning Zhonghua nodded and seemed to be relieved, so he continued, "After one of my friends heard about your medical skills, he asked me to ask you if you can completely cure his diabetes." "Diabetes?" Hearing this, Chen Shi couldn't help but feel a little dumbfounded. He suddenly knew that Ning Zhonghua had bragged about his magical skills outside. "It can't be cured?" Ning Zhonghua carefully probed. "It can be cured." Chen Shi nodded. After glancing at Ning Zhonghua, an idea popped up in his mind. So he slowly said, "Diabetes is not a terminal disease. As long as you take the pill I gave you last time, you will naturally be cured, but..." Here came the point. Seeing this, Ning Zhonghua immediately leaned forward slightly, looking like he was all ears. Chen Shi raised a finger and smiled, 1 million per pill, and the actual effect is not as good as the one you took before. Some difficult diseases may require a few more pills." After saying this, he looked at Ning Qiudong thoughtfully. Of course, Ning Qiudong knew why Chen Shi was looking at her, so her whole pretty face immediately blushed. She was a little embarrassed and quickly said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Chen. I really didn't recognize you before. Don't say any more, it's all in the past." Chen Shi smiled and interrupted her, then continued to say to Ning Zhonghua, "There are a few diseases that my pills can't cure. In Chinese medicine, I can't cure the 4 major syndromes of wind, tuberculosis, and diarrhea. In Western medicine, I can't cure AIDS, cancer, leukemia, rheumatoid arthritis, and amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, which are listed as the world's 5 most difficult diseases in the world by the World Health Organization. As for other diseases such as diabetes and cirrhosis, if you take a few more pills, you can slowly recover." In fact, it was not that he couldn't cure these so-called terminal diseases, but that they were too troublesome. These terminal diseases either involved cellular lesions or the central nervous system. If he wanted to cure them completely, in addition to taking immortal medicine, Chen Shi also had to use his true essence to carefully comb the patient's body. For the current him, the burden and consumption were a little too great. After listening to Chen Shi's words, Ning Zhonghua nodded repeatedly and said, "Yes, Mr. Chen, 1 pill from you can guarantee that the disease will be cured. It's 10,000 times better than going to the hospital and constantly tormenting, that's it. Come to me the day after tomorrow, and I'll give you 10 pills first." "Okay, then we won't bother you. Take a seat." After Ning Zhonghua and Ning Qiudong gently closed the door and left, the little fellow came to Chen Shi and asked in a sweet voice, "Papa, can you cure diseases?" "Of course, didn't Papa just cure you yesterday?" Chapter 70. After Ning Zhonghua left, the little fellow jumped into Chen Shi's arms again, and then continued to watch where Daddy went with Chen Shi. The little fellow watched where Daddy went, but her focus was different from Chen Shi's. What she liked was the strange scenery and games, while Chen Shi watched the interaction between the cute girl and Daddy. After watching the first episode, Chen Shi wanted to show her the second episode, but the little fellow didn't want to watch it anymore. Instead, she leaned her little head forward and said to Chen Shi expectantly, "Papa, I also want to play 123 Wooden Man, okay, Daddy will play with you." Chen Shi touched her little head, and then stood up with her in his arms. In fact, Games like hide and seek and 123 Wooden Man were more fun with more people. She thought for a moment and asked the big cat to play with him. So, the little fellow leaned against the wall and counted. She and the big cat stood behind her and moved toward her like snails. 1, 2, 3, Wooden Man. After the little fellow shouted, she immediately jumped and turned around, but she and the big cat seemed to have never moved. After several times, the little fellow didn't catch any trace of their movements, so she couldn't help but pout. When she turned around again, this time she quickly shouted, 123. Without even calling out to the wooden man, the little fellow hurriedly turned her head. Just after she turned her head, she pretended to be panicked, made an extremely exaggerated posture, and constantly swayed his center of gravity from side to side, as if he was completely unstable. I caught you. You moved. You moved. The little fellow jumped and clapped her hands, then pointed at she and giggled. Well, I was caught by you. It's my turn to count 123. She pretended to be regretful and said, I'll be Wooden Man. The little guy quickly ran to Shi's side, then pulled the big cat back to the corner, ready to start another round. Shi, on the other hand, did what she did just now. He slowly leaned against the wall and shouted, 1, 2, 3, Wood Man. After saying that, he imitated the little fellow and turned around. The little girl pursed her lips and looked very serious. She had just taken a step with her left foot and her little hand was still waving in the air. When she saw Shi turn around, she tried her best to stop her body from shaking. Shi pretended not to see her move, so he turned around and started counting again. Most of the children nowadays spent their childhood in the company of toys and cartoons. It wasn't that they didn't like to play games such as 123 Wooden Dummies, hide and seek, but because there was no one to play with. Shi was very patient. As long as the little girl was happy, he could play with her all day. So, when Lin Xian finished everything and came to find them, the father and daughter were still playing 123 Wooden Dummies in the room. She didn't know why the relationship between the little fellow and Lin Xian had improved by leaps and bounds. Lin Xian was just an ordinary big sister in the eyes of the little fellow, but after attending Fang Lei's wedding, the little fellow began to like Lin Xian very much. So when she heard the knock on the door, she ran to open it excitedly. This time, it was Lin Xian standing outside the door. When Lin Xian saw that she was sweating profusely, her first reaction was to take her to the bathroom and wash her face with a hot towel. What are you playing? Are you having so much fun, 123 Wooden Dummies? It's so fun. After Lin Xian washed her face, the little fellow's whole face was still red, looking like a ripe apple. Have you been playing for a long time? Are you tired? Tired. But it's fun. Lin Xian gently tapped the tip of her little nose, then carried her out of the bathroom. Drink some water, children need to drink more water. After pouring a glass of water for the little fellow and letting her gulp it down, Lin Xian looked at Shi and praised, when a man takes care of a child, not many are as patient as you. Hearing this, Shi suddenly smiled and said, This is my daughter, if I don't have patience for her, who will? Lin Xian smiled and didn't say anything. Then she took the bouquet she brought and handed it to the little fellow. Big sister brought you a bouquet of flowers, do you like it? I like it. It's so beautiful. It smells so good. The little fellow took the bouquet and smelled it, then suddenly smiled happily. She had seen this bouquet yesterday, but Lin Xian didn't allow her to touch it. She didn't expect that she would give it to her today. At this time, Shi said thoughtfully, This is the bride's bouquet, right? I heard that after the bridesmaid receives the bouquet, it's best to dry it and leave it at home for a good omen. If you give it to her like this, I'm afraid this bouquet won't live past tonight. I don't believe in that. Lin Xian shook her head and pinched the little fellow's little face, then looked at Shi thoughtfully and said, Happiness isn't given by others, it's fought for by oneself. That's insightful. Shi gave her a thumbs up, then continued to smile and said, Yesterday I heard from Fang Lei that you seem to have been single all this time. Since happiness is fought for by oneself, why don't you fight for it? This woman is an old lady after 28, she can't be single forever, right? Hearing this, Lin Xian's expression changed, as if she was a little angry. It's none of your business. Her voice wasn't loud, and after she finished speaking, she turned her head and played with the little fellow. It seemed that she didn't want to talk to Qin Shi anymore. Seeing this, Qin Shi could only smile awkwardly and quickly apologize to her. Sorry, I said too much. Humph. Lin Xian snorted softly, but still didn't say anything. The atmosphere was a little awkward. Qin Shi looked at the TV and didn't dare to say anything more. After Lin Xian played with the little fellow for a while, she seemed to have calmed down. She turned her head again, looked at him, and asked, after dinner, the cruise ship will go out to sea again and will return the day after tomorrow. You are going to stay until the day after tomorrow? I'm going to take her back later. We've been out for a few days, it's almost time to go back to kindergarten. Lin Xian was stunned for a moment, as if she didn't expect them to leave so soon, so she immediately became a little anxious and said quickly, it's rare to have such an opportunity, why don't you stay for a few more days? Now the country is advocating to reduce the burden. The child is only 4 years old, there's no need to send her to kindergarten in such a hurry, right? Qin Shi was choked by her words. After thinking about it, he replied seriously, I mainly want her to develop a habit. She's more than 4 years old, so the sooner she gets used to the school environment, the faster she can adapt to primary school in the future. But there's no need to rush in these 2 days, right? She's only 4 years old. You're suppressing a child's nature. Besides, she's only in the middle class, right? Most of the time she goes to kindergarten, she's just playing with the teacher. After saying that, Lin Xian looked at the little fellow and asked, Nian Nian, do you want to play on the cruise ship for 2 more days? Sister will take you to the children's park, you haven't been there yet, right? I want to go. I want to go to the children's park. When it came to playing, the little fellow immediately became excited and wanted to stand up with a bouquet of flowers. Lin Xian hugged the little fellow and glanced at Qin Shi as if to show off. Seeing this, Qin Shi could only shake his head and smile bitterly. I only applied for 7 days of leave from the teacher, today is already the 7th day. Give me the phone, I'll talk to the teacher. Chapter 71. Papa, where are we going? I'm not afraid of anything as long as you're here. The little fellow stood on the sofa, clapped her hands excitedly, and then sang along with the music on Lin Xian's mobile phone. However, after the little fellow finished singing, Qin Shi didn't continue singing, so she was immediately unhappy. She stood on the sofa and stomped her feet, and then said loudly, Papa. You don't want to play with me anymore. Hearing this, Qin Shi smiled bitterly and said quickly, Okay, let's sing again. Papa will sing with you. She had sung 5 times, and she could only sing 2 lines each time, but she still enjoyed it. It wasn't that Qin Shi couldn't sing. With his control over his body, it was a simple matter for him to sing well. However, he always felt a little embarrassed, especially when Big Cat and Lin Xian were also listening. It felt weird. At this time, Lin Xian also paused the music. She played the music again, and then shouted to Qin Shi, It's a good thing that the child is willing to learn to sing. You should cooperate with her. Okay, I'm wrong. Let's sing again. Papa will sing with you. The prelude sounded. The little fellow didn't learn English, so she didn't know what they were talking about. The main song was not as catchy as the chorus, so she couldn't remember it after listening to it several times. She could only muddle through with it. Finally, the chorus came. Before the music on the mobile phone started, the little fellow was already shouting, Papa, where are we going? After singing this sentence, the little fellow realized that she couldn't keep up with the beat. After a pause, she finally caught up with the rhythm, waved her little hands and shouted, I'm not afraid of anything. After singing, the little fellow looked at Qin Shi with some expectation. Baby, I'm your big tree. I'll accompany you to watch the sunrise for the rest of my life. Chen-shi caught it accurately, which made the little guy immediately jump from the sofa happily, and then directly rushed into Chen-shi's arms. Daddy, Daddy, where are we going? Hee, the song, Where Are You Going, Daddy, played on a loop. After singing a few more times, under the organization of the little fellow, the game of 123 wooden men started again. But this time, there were 3 wooden men. It was time for dinner. The little girl walked in the middle, holding Chen-shi's hand in one hand and Lin Xian's hand in the other. From time to time, she would suddenly lift her legs and let them carry her. After they walked into the restaurant, they randomly chose a table and sat down. The little girl was still singing, Where's Daddy? At this time, Wang Lu, who was not far away, noticed them. She quickly used her elbow to lightly nudge Li Xiaowen beside her, indicating for him to look over there. After watching for a while, Li Xiaowen's expression became uglier and uglier. Lin Xian and Chen-shi have known each other for a long time. The relationship between them has always been very good. Wang Lu saw his expression and immediately knew what he was thinking, so she quickly said, Why don't we go over and say hello? Let's go. Hearing this, Li Xiaowen immediately got up and walked over. Wang Lu quickly carried her bag and followed behind him. Xian, Mr. Chen, you don't mind, right? As Li Xiaowen spoke, he pointed to the seat next to Lin Xian. Because it was just dinner time, many guests had not yet arrived at the restaurant, so Chen-shi's table was completely empty. Lin Xian's attitude towards Li Xiaowen was still the same as before. After slightly raising her head to look at him, Lin Xian acted as if nothing had happened. She lowered her head again and continued to play with the little fellow. Chen-shi saw that Li Xiaowen was embarrassed, so he nodded at him and said politely, We're also here to freeload. Please go ahead. At this time, Wang Lu acted as if she had just seen Lin Xian. She immediately stood up from behind Li Xiaowen and ran directly behind Lin Xian. She leaned over and hugged her from behind. Xian, why didn't I see you when I came in this morning? Do you know how beautiful you are today? You almost stole Leilei's limelight. As Wang Lu spoke, she even made a hand gesture with an exaggerated expression. It's not as exaggerated as you say. I'm not the one getting married. Why are you being so sweet? Be careful not to let Leilei hear you. You're done for. Lin Xian really liked Wang Lu's words, so she immediately pulled her to sit next to her. At this time, Li Xiaowen also sat next to Wang Lu. After Wang Lu said a few words to Lin Xian, she smiled and greeted Chen-shi. She said mysteriously, Chen-shi, you're really good at hiding things. What am I good at hiding things? Chen-shi was confused by her inexplicable words. Still pretending? Wang Lu looked like she had seen through him. She pretended to be serious and said, Tell me the truth. Did you create the Fuqing building advertisement that blew up my friends that day? Hearing this, Lin Xian could not help but look at Chen-shi thoughtfully. Not long after this incident, she was kidnapped by Zhao Yuan. If Wang Lu did not mention it now, she would have forgotten that Chen-shi had caused such a huge commotion. Li Xiaowen, on the other hand, didn't know that Chen-shi was the one who caused the explosion in his circle of friends. Haven't I always wanted to find Ying? So I asked a friend to help me think of a way, but I didn't expect his method to cause such a huge commotion. Your friend is really amazing. If there's a chance, introduce us to him. One more friend means one more path, don't you think so? Perhaps Chen-shi could not stand Wang Lu's unscrupulousness. After nodding lightly, he did not speak anymore. Wang Lu and Li Xiaowen's sudden appearance made Lin Xian's mood turn bad. Thus, she did not speak anymore. She took out her phone and started playing by herself. When Wang Lu spoke to her, she did not say a word. When Wang Lu wanted to lead the topic to Li Xiaowen, Lin Xian completely shut her mouth. She did not even make a sound. He had already said so much, but Lin Xian was still the same. Even Wang Lu felt a little bored. Thus, she could only look at Li Xiaowen helplessly. Li Xiaowen's expression was very ugly. He was silent for a while. Then, he suddenly stood up. Without saying a word, he turned around and walked out. This was the first time he had lost his composure in front of Lin Xian. Wang Lu was stunned. She stared blankly at Li Xiuwen as he left. Until she saw Li Xiuwen walk out of the restaurant, she looked at Lin Xian with an exasperated look and complained, "Xian Xian. Don't be like this all the time. What's wrong with Li Xiuwen? Why do you always treat him like this? He's also infatuated with you. Can't you try? Enough. Stop talking." Lin Xian shouted and interrupted Wang Lu. Her full chest rose and fell quickly. It was obvious that she was very angry. Wang Lu was also shocked by her sudden outburst. The little guy also quickly raised his head and looked at Lin Xian. Then, he stretched out his little hand and touched her face. He comforted her softly, "Sister, don't be angry. Don't be angry." Lin Xian rubbed his little head. Then, she squeezed out a smile and said reluctantly, "Good girl. Sister won't be angry." After saying that, Lin Xian looked at Wang Lu and said seriously, "Lulu, I really don't need you to worry about my personal problems. If you continue to be like this, I think we can't even be friends. Xian Xian, you." Chapter 72. Lin Xian's personality was straightforward, and she had always been clear about her likes and dislikes. Wang Lu really did not expect that her matchmaking this time would make Lin Xian so angry. She had done this many times in the past. Why couldn't she do it this time? Wang Lu looked at the two of them in surprise, her eyes full of disbelief. Seeing this, Lin Xian immediately knew what she was thinking. Therefore, after calming down a little, Lin Xian shook her head, looked at Wang Lu and said seriously, "Lulu, I really don't like Li Xiuwen. I beg you, don't interfere anymore, okay?" "Okay." Wang Lu looked at her with a complicated expression. Then, she sighed heavily, as if she was lamenting. She said, "Sit down, I'll go take a look at Li Xiuwen. No matter what, he's our family's breadwinner. I don't dare to order him around like you do." With that, Wang Lu got up and left. Lin Xian did not ask her to stay. In fact, other than being a gold digger, Wang Lu was good in other aspects, which was why Lin Xian had been friends with her for so many years. But it was a pity, the values of the two of them were too different, so until now, they could not be the closest friends. In the sea of life, how could one be so lucky? In such a big city, she could not find a single friend that she could confide in. Sometimes, when she thought about it, perhaps she felt a little sad. After Wang Lu left, Lin Xian looked at the table in front of her with unfocused eyes, and no one knew what she was thinking. Chen Shi waited for a while, and seeing that she was not in a good state, he asked softly, "What's wrong?" After hearing Chen Shi's voice, Lin Xian seemed to have been woken up from a dream. She shook her head and said with a smile, "Nothing." Okay, seeing that she had something on her mind, Chen Shi motioned for the little guy to come over, and prepared to let Lin Xian be alone. The little guy climbed from Lin Xian's lap to Chen Shi's lap. At this moment, Lin Xian suddenly said faintly, "Chen Shi." "Ah." Chen Shi held the little fellow in his arms and motioned for her to sit still. Then he asked, "What's wrong?" Lin Xian hesitated for a moment before asking in a seemingly casual manner, "Do you have any plans after this?" "What arrangement?" "I mean, other than taking care of the children, what other plans do you have for the future?" "Oh, I found out that the last time Ying was seen was in Shangjing, so I'll be going to Shangjing soon. But I can't decide when and how long I'll be there. We'll talk about it when the time comes." "You want to find her?" "Yes." At this point, Chen Shi even gently patted the little fellows, but before he smiled and said, "If it wasn't for this little fellow, I would definitely have gone long ago." Hearing this, Lin Xian couldn't help but ask anxiously, "There's no news of her at all. How are you going to find her?" "I'll take my time to find her. Information and clues are all obtained through exploration." It's not something that can be found by waiting here every day. Then what about the child? You're going to find her. You can't take the child with you on the streets every day, right? That's why I said I'm not sure. She glanced at Lin Xian and said matter-of-factly, the child is already so old. I just came back. Of course, I have to spend some time with her first. As for when we'll go to Shangjing, we'll talk about it after a while. When the time comes, I'll take Nian with me. We'll walk slowly and look carefully. Just treat it as a vacation. After hearing this, Lin Xian fell silent. After a while, she asked softly, what if you can't find her? After saying this, Lin Xian was stunned for a moment. Then she panicked and quickly said, "Pfft, sorry, I jinxed it. I believe that you'll definitely find Ying. Then I'll count on your auspicious words." Shi chuckled, as if he didn't notice Lin Xian's strangeness. The cruise ship went to sea again. More than half of the guests didn't leave. After all, a cruise ship trip was quite a rare thing. If they could play for free, of course they would enjoy it to their heart's content. Because the voyage was too short, the cruise ship could only cruise on the sea. There was no way to take them to experience the exotic scenery. But fortunately, there were many entertainment facilities on the cruise ship, so the guests could basically enjoy themselves to their heart's content. After the wedding, Lin Xian completely lost her role as the bridesmaid, so she simply moved to the room next to Shi's and played with the little guy all day long. From the children's park to the swimming pool, and then to the bowling alley. The little guy played the children's bowling ball for a while and felt a little dissatisfied, so he wanted to play the standard track. However, even the lightest bowling ball weighed 6 to 7 caddies. She huffed and puffed with great effort before she could lift it up. After she threw it out, the ball immediately fell into the side of the bowling alley. Even lifting the ball was a problem, let alone hitting the bowling pins. Lin Xian let her try a few times. She was afraid that the ball would hit her feet, so she coaxed her out of the bowling alley. In the evening, Lin Xian took him to the top deck to eat barbecue. The little guy pointed to the moon on the sea and sang loudly, "Where is Daddy going?" which immediately attracted the praise of the people around. Several children at the next table even sang with the little guy. The crisp and pleasant children's voice and the crashing waves complemented each other. The whole cruise ship seemed to be much happier. The next morning, after breakfast, Lin Xian took the little guy to the deck to bask in the sun. She had learned yoga, so she made a few simple movements and let the little guy follow her. The little guy sat on the yoga mat and tried his best to learn. She couldn't help but laugh at the silly look on his face. Later, Lin Xian gave him a spa treatment and went to the cruise ship's theater to watch a wonderful performance. Although Shi accompanied them throughout the 2 days, he was always like a little transparent. Lin Xian rushed to do everything, which directly led to the little guy's first reaction now was not to call her Papa, but to call her big sister. This also made Shi feel a little unaccustomed. The little guy seemed to like Lin Xian more and more. Maybe this was the difference between a man and a woman taking care of a child. After all, women were more attentive than men, and it was easier to win the child's favor. However, happy times were always short. Finally, the cruise ship returned to the port. And it was time for this trip to come to an end. On the dock. Until Shi got into the taxi, the little guy reluctantly let go of Lin Xian's hand. "Goodbye, big sister. I'll miss you." The little guy waved her hand vigorously, as well behaved as when she said goodbye to her grandmother. "Goodbye, baby. I'll come to see you when I'm free." "Okay." The car started. The little guy sat in the car, but kept looking back at Lin Xian who was still standing in the same place. She hugged her and gently patted her back, motioning her to sit still. "Papa, I like big sister." The little guy laughed and gave Lin Xian the highest praise. She shook his head and did not say anything. The little guy happily sang, "Where is Daddy going?" which made the taxi driver couldn't help but praise, "Your daughter is so cute." "Thank you." She smiled and nodded in response. Chapter 73. Maybe because of the holiday syndrome, when Qin woke the little fellow up this morning, she actually stayed in bed for a long time. At this time, he couldn't spoil her anymore. So even if the little fellow didn't want to open her eyes, Qin had to get up and wash up with her. After washing up and eating, after dawdling for a long time, the little fellow was reluctantly carried out of the house by Qin. On the way to the kindergarten, she suddenly asked timidly, "Papa, can I not go to kindergarten?" "No." Qin's attitude was now very firm. For children, he couldn't be too spoiled. The little fellow pouted and struggled to let go of Qin, but Qin didn't ask and directly carried her to the gate of the kindergarten. Teacher Wang smiled and said hello to Qin. Qin wanted to give the little fellow to her. But at this time, the little fellow suddenly broke out. She burst into tears and shouted that she didn't want to go to kindergarten. After several times of comforting, Teacher Wang had to take the father and daughter to the lounge next door, and then let Qin persuade her. This situation was very common in kindergartens. After Qin's patient and earnest teaching, the little fellow finally calmed down, and then said with a pitiful look, "Papa, you have to pick me up." "Don't worry, Papa will pick you up on time." "Good girl, you have to listen to the teacher, okay?" After more than half an hour, Qin finally sent the little fellow back to the classroom. Out of the kindergarten, the big cat was already standing under the tree and waiting. Qin threw it a simplified Peiyuan pill that she had made last night, and it was so happy that it jumped back and forth between the trees. "You are a pet, and pets can't enter the kindergarten, so you have to stay outside and don't go in, okay?" Meow. Seeing the big cat jump to the pillar on the wall of the kindergarten and lie down, Qin was relieved and left by taxi. Qin had already refined the simplified version of the Peiyuan pill last night. Although Ning Zhonghua hadn't come to get the medicine yet, he had transferred the 10 million yuan in advance. With money, Qin's plan could begin to be carried out. First, he had to find a storeroom. There was a shantytown less than a kilometer behind Kangju district. The houses there had long been plans to be demolished, but the local residents and the developers had not come to an agreement, so the relocation had not been carried out until now. Qin took a taxi and looked around. Then, he chose an old house by the street. The house was a little old, and the roof was still tiled. It was 3 stories high and had a small courtyard. There was a fence and an iron gate. It looked pretty good. The landlord was an auntie, and she asked for 2,200 yuan a month. Qin was rich now, and he didn't know if it was a good deal, so he didn't even ask for the price, and directly paid half a year's rent. Including the deposit, it was a total of 15,400 yuan. After Qin paid, the auntie quickly stuffed the key to him. Then, without mentioning the contract, she went back to the mahjong house next door with a cigarette in her mouth. Qin hadn't seen such a boorish style in a long time, so he simply tried the key and checked the rooms one by one. After that, he took a taxi and set off again. This time, his destination was the Chinese medicine market next to the Xingwang Temple. This was the largest Chinese medicine wholesale market in Zhonghai. The medicine here was not bought by the kilogram, but by the kilogram. Qin bought 100 kilograms of cordyceps pupae, but the boss thought that it was too little, and only gave him 20 yuan less per kilogram. The original price was 1,000 yuan a kilogram, and the current price was 980 yuan. Wild baiji was 600 yuan a kilogram, which was 1,200 yuan a kilogram. Qin thought it was too expensive, but the boss didn't want to give him less, and said that this was the wholesale price. Well, 100,000 yuan was gone again. Red ginseng was 500 yuan a kilogram, which was much more cost-effective. If he bought 100 kilograms, the boss would give him a discount, and he could take it home for 40,000 yuan. Relatively speaking, ginseng was not that expensive. 600 yuan a kilogram, and 100 kilograms would only cost 60,000 yuan. Qin bought as he shopped. It wasn't that he didn't have rich customers like him, but it was very rare. So, he became famous after a while. Qin only bought the best quality and the oldest. So, many bosses took out their treasures and followed behind him to promote their medicine. In fact, whether it was artificially bred or natural, there was not much difference in Chen Shi's eyes. He only cared about one thing, and that was how much spiritual energy was contained in the medicine. Because he bought too much, Chen Shi couldn't transport these medicine back. Zhonghai prohibited trucks from entering and leaving between 6 in the morning and 2 in the morning, so he could only pay the deposit first. At night, the medicine bosses could send him the medicine he bought today. When Chen Shi arranged everything and returned to the kindergarten, it was already 3:30 in the afternoon. Big Cat was still dozing in the sun on the pillar of the wall. The little girl was happily playing eagle catch chicken with the other children under the guidance of the teacher. Chen Shi stood outside the wall and looked at the little girl's happy face through the fence. In an instant, even his mood was much better. Zhonghai, Binjiang Club. Binjiang Club was jointly founded by several rich people in Zhonghai, and Ning Zhonghua was one of the founders. As the top and most high-end private club in Zhonghai, Binjiang Club was also the most low-key private club in Zhonghai. Every member of Binjiang Club could be called a real rich and powerful person. They could be well-known entrepreneurs, capital tycoons, scholars, heroes, and political leaders. In short, this was an elite gathering point composed of political celebrities, business celebrities, cultural celebrities, and social celebrities. Binjiang Club was famous for its jianghu. On the dining table, there were lively jianghu dishes, and in the business field, there was a chivalrous jianghu token. Every member had their own jianghu token. If the holder of the jianghu token was in any emergency, as long as the token was shown, the chairman had the obligation to convene a hero assembly to organize all members to discuss countermeasures and help the holder through the crisis. Moreover, each member only had one chance to use the token. Binjiang Club was not open to the public, and to become a member, one had to go through layers of assessment. Now there was a saying that without the jianghu token, no matter how rich you were just a country bumpkin who was excluded from the core circle. On this day, Ning Zhonghua, as the founder, suddenly called a meeting. So early in the morning, when Ning Qiudong saw Ning Zhonghua put on a three-piece suit and came downstairs, she was so scared that the coffee cup in her hand almost fell to the ground. "Dad, what are you doing?" Ever since Ning Zhonghua came back from Nanyang 3 years ago, he had never worn a three-piece suit. He dressed like a retired old man all day long. Now, he suddenly changed into a three-piece suit, with a tie, leather shoes, and neatly combed hair. The sudden change in style made Ning Qiudong unable to accept it. "Hee, how is it? Dad is handsome, right?" Handsome, Ning Qiudong looked at her father, who suddenly became more energetic, and asked curiously, "Dad, what are you doing?" Hearing this, Ning Zhonghua smiled mysteriously, shook his head, and did not answer. Seeing this, Ning Qiudong immediately stomped her feet. Just as she was about to act coquettishly, Ning Zhonghua made a shushing gesture at her, and then said mysteriously, "Don't ask. Dad is going to do something serious, so I won't accompany you to eat breakfast." After that, without waiting for Ning Qiudong's reply, he quickly walked out of the house, then got into the Maybach S600, and slowly left Jinjiang Resort. Ning Qiudong stood at the door and watched the car gradually go away, but her brows were slightly furrowed. What kind of song was this? Thank you to Ning Xiaojia, the nouveau riche girl, for the 50,000 reward. Jejia is a nouveau riche, I have to hug her tightly. Chapter 74. At this point, the basic structure of the book has been formed, so I'll make my attitude clear. From now on, I won't answer any questions about the plot. I only have one sentence: if you think it's good, then read it. If it's not good, then leave. If an idiot says I'm just being narcissistic, I want to say, are you a moron? Have you read too many novels? You always come here to show off your IQ, but you always forget to bring the most important thing, your brain. Don't you know there's a thing called foreshadowing? You're always wrong here and there. How high do you think your IQ is? Honestly, sometimes when I see your comments, I feel like laughing. It feels like I'm feeding a child. I have to explain things clearly to him so that he can understand what I mean. I don't want to write a running account, and I don't want to write a face for each character. You say it's not reasonable. You finish a chapter in 2 or 3 minutes, but I finish a chapter in 2 or 3 hours. How long do you think you've been thinking? And how long did I think? You can make suggestions, you can find bugs, but please don't make a conclusion without reading the rest of the chapter. That's really stupid. Finally. Chapter 75. Ning Zhonghua looked around with satisfaction. Seeing that the atmosphere in the venue had reached the level he wanted, he slowly said, "Let me make it clear first. Although this medicine can cure all diseases, it can't change one's fate. For example, a patient with advanced cancer who is half a step away from death's door will only be able to extend his life for a while after taking it. It won't cure him completely." Speaking of this, Ning Zhonghua chuckled and said, "After all, this isn't an elixir refined by Taishang Lao Jun." Everyone was amused by him. Previously, when they saw his solemn expression, many people really thought that his medicine could bring the dead back to life. In short, no matter what illness you have, as long as it hasn't deteriorated to the middle or late stage, your condition will naturally improve after taking this pill. This is a rare opportunity, so I suggest that everyone here should think about it carefully. After all, the youngest among us should be above 45 years old. Money can be earned again, but you only have one life. Even if you're healthy and don't get sick at all, you can buy it and keep it as insurance, right? After that, Ning Zhonghua stood quietly on the stage, giving all the members time to think. Everyone was discussing in low voices. Ning Zhonghua's introduction was very general, and they couldn't test the medicine, so everyone was still a little confused. After about 2 minutes, Ning Zhonghua coughed softly and announced, "Next, I'll talk about the specific process of the auction. There's a screen in front of you that will automatically turn on later. Then, you can fill in your bid on it. You can increase the price at any time during the auction. When the price stops at a certain number for more than 2 minutes, the transaction will be considered a success. The starting price is 1 million. Then, let's begin." As soon as he finished speaking, all the screens in the venue lit up together, including the big screen behind Ning Zhonghua. It suddenly changed to another image. At the top was the first one, and below it was a series of blank lines. After a member tried to enter 1 million, the big screen instantly showed a bidding ranking list. First place, 1 million. TSK, old Ning really knows how to play. Seeing this, a big boss sitting in the front row laughed and joked with the person next to him, then pressed a series of zeros. The number on the ranking board suddenly jumped, and the number at the top suddenly became 10 million. My wife has diabetes and high blood pressure. It's not serious, but it still affects her normal life. I hope old Ning's medicine is really as effective as he said, hee. After pressing the number, the big boss didn't even look at the big screen. Instead, he continued to chat with the few members next to him. Looking at his indifferent expression, it seemed more like he was supporting Ning Zhonghua. Thinking about it, Ning Zhonghua was a well-known business tycoon in Zhonghai. He made such a big fuss just to hold this auction. If the price was too low, he would lose all his face. However, what happened next was somewhat out of the big shot's expectations. Not long after he pressed 10 million, the numbers on the big screen began to jump rapidly. 11 million. 12 million. 15 million. 20 million. 30 million. At first, it was 1 million, but later on, it was 10 million. By the time he received a reminder and looked at the big screen again, the number on it had already changed to 50 million, a total of 50 million. How long has it been? Less than a minute. The big shot looked a little surprised, as if he hadn't come back to his senses yet. While he was in a daze, the number on the screen had already changed to 55 million. This price had the bidder's name on it. The big shot looked back at the member who made the bid with a little surprise, but he saw that the member looked excited and nervous, as if he was worried that the price would change again. Seeing this, the big shot finally stopped watching the show and began to think about the true value of this pill. None of his family members seemed to have contracted a terminal illness yet, but from the looks of it, buying one to keep at home as a precaution wasn't a bad idea. Thinking of this, the big shot couldn't help but change his expression. He finally pressed a series of numbers on the screen seriously. 60 million. This price should be about right, the big shot pondered. However, when he looked up at the big screen again, he still wasn't the highest bidder. 65 million in cash. This wasn't a small number. And there were 9 more. So, the big shot wanted to stand up and ask everyone present, is this necessary? Before he could ask his question, the big screen gave him an answer that he didn't want to see. 70 million. When this number appeared, it was like a bucket of cold water was poured over everyone's heads. The atmosphere in the venue also cooled down a lot. This wasn't a project investment through the company. This was a private payment in cash. 70 million in cash was indeed a bit too much. Everyone present was a sly old fox in the business world, so they were particularly sensitive to cash. Just because he had a net worth of tens of billions didn't mean that he had tens of billions of cash at his disposal. 70 million was already a lot. It was time to think about whether it was worth it or not. Ning Zhonghua stood calmly on the stage. Like Jiang Taigong fishing, he did not say a word. He just smiled and looked at the audience. It seemed that he did not have the professional awareness that an auctioneer should have. Finally, when the 2-minute countdown on the big screen turned red and there were only 30 seconds left, the bid of 70 million was refreshed. 71 million. Even though it was only a million, it was like reactivating clockwork on everyone present, causing the price to rise crazily again. 80 million. 90 million. 100 million. A pill whose true effect wasn't even certain was sold at a sky-high price of 100 million. Perhaps when everyone finally realized that there were 9 pills left, the number on the big screen finally stopped jumping. The 2-minute countdown ended. 100 million. The transaction was successful. Then, an old man with white hair and a beard slowly stood up and politely nodded to all the members present. While he took the lead, he also officially gave a reference standard for the actual value of this pill. With this standard as a reference, the following bids were much simpler. The prices of the next few pills were basically maintained at around 90 million. Once it exceeded 90 million, everyone would consider giving up and waiting for the next pill. Perhaps it was because everyone still had a certain amount of doubt about the effect of the pill. Therefore, when the first few desperate members got the pills they wanted, the price of the pills became lower and lower. The last pill was only sold at 80 million. Then, it stopped moving and began the countdown. Ning Zhonghua didn't panic at all. In fact, he didn't care how much money he could get today. Businessmen were after profits. Ning Zhonghua had mobilized all his connections to hold this auction. What he was after was not as simple as money. He had a big plan, Ning Zhonghua thought while looking at the name of the last bidder. But after seeing the name, Ning Zhonghua was stunned for a moment. Then, he quietly winked at Zhang Jiada, who was below the stage. And he found the figure of the bidder in the crowd. Su Wei. An old friend. He started by smuggling medical equipment. Later, during the craze of state-owned enterprise reform, he used some means to turn a well-run state-owned pharmaceutical company into his private enterprise. Because of this, he completely integrated into the rich circle of Zhonghai. Ning Zhonghua knew Su Wei more than 20 years ago. The two had some small conflicts back then. But with their own development and growth, the small conflicts had long been forgotten, so when they met, they would still smile and greet each other. As for whether or not they were secretly cursing each other, that was another matter altogether. Su Wei had a good relationship with the other founders. In addition, his pharmaceutical business had been growing over the years. Therefore, he was recommended to join the Binjiang Association. In today's auction, Su Wei didn't want to bid because he had always been at odds with Ning Zhonghua. He started in the pharmaceutical industry. Now, Ning Zhonghua casually took out 10 inexplicable pills and they could be sold for a sky-high price of more than 1 billion in cash. How could Su Wei not be jealous? So after hesitating for a while, Su Wei decided to buy one and take it back to the laboratory to study it. He wanted to see if this medicine was really that magical. If it was really as magical as Ning Zhonghua said, he really didn't believe that with their company's research and development level, they couldn't make the exact same pill. Zhang Jiada was an official member. After this period of recovery, he had gradually walked out of the shadow. Therefore, at Ning Zhonghua's request, he came to help him set up the venue. The two were also old friends for many years, not to mention that they had an agreement in advance. So Zhang Jiada didn't hesitate at all and immediately bid 90 million. Looking at the number that suddenly jumped on the big screen, Su Wei couldn't help but be stunned. He had observed for a long time. There were so many people present. Most of them were just here to join in the fun. They were really reluctant to spend 100 million to buy an unknown pill. So except for the few members who were in a hurry at the beginning, those who bid later looked like they could buy it or not. Su Wei originally thought that he could get a bargain, but he didn't expect that he would be bid up in the end. This was the Binjiang auction, not the auction outside. Everyone was a reputable figure, so even if Su Wei knew that Zhang Jiada was very close to Ning Zhonghua, he didn't think that Ning Zhonghua would really let Zhang Jiada be his shill. 95 million. Su Wei gritted his teeth and gave a new offer. But Zhang Jiada didn't even lift his eyelids and immediately followed. 100 million. F***ck. If this time he said that Zhang Jiada was not a shill, Su Wei really didn't believe it. He didn't buy it at the beginning and had to wait until he bid to raise the price, F***ck. Su Wei was now like an arrow on the string, so after hesitating, he increased the price again. 110 million. Seeing this, Zhang Jiada immediately glanced at Ning Zhonghua. Ning Zhonghua clenched his right fist and then quietly lowered his index finger. Zhang Jiada understood, so he immediately increased the price by 10 million. 120 million. This time, Su Wei was really angry. So after seeing Zhang Jiada's bid, he immediately stood up and didn't even bother to lower the price. He directly shouted, 130 million. This was the rhythm of turning hostile. This was the Binjiang auction. Since Ning Zhonghua dared to do this, Su Wei dared to turn hostile. If Zhang Jiada increased the price again, even if it was 1 yuan, Su Wei would flip the table today. Everyone present was smart. Some of the big shots who knew some of the secrets had long understood that Ning Zhonghua was deliberately tricking Su Wei. Ning Zhonghua wasn't really greedy for that little money. He did this purely to annoy Su Wei. So, a big shot closest to Ning Zhonghua immediately coughed and shook his head slightly. That was enough. And Zhang Jiada already understood Ning Zhonghua's meaning, so he didn't increase the price and let Su Wei win the last pill at 130 million. The auction was over. After Ning Zhonghua glanced at everyone present, he slowly walked down the steps. He didn't even want to avoid arousing suspicion and directly sat next to Zhang Jiada. After the two looked at each other, they suddenly burst into laughter. And Su Wei fiercely stared in Ning Zhonghua's direction. The grudge between them had already grown big. 10 simplified version of the energy cultivation pill that was only fit to be eaten by the big cat as a snack. After Ning Zhonghua changed hands, it actually sold for a sky-high price of close to 1 billion. And as the hidden expert that Ning Zhonghua mentioned, at this moment, Shi was standing in the courtyard she had just rented. Looking at the mountain-like pile of medicinal herbs, she smiled slightly. This time, he must remember to add honey and sugar. There are too many numbers in this chapter. I'm afraid that you'll say that I'm lame, so I combined it into a chapter of nearly 4,000 words. So today is the third watch. Chapter 76. Since I'm the author, not giving spoilers is the least I can do. That's why it's not convenient for me to tell you too much about the plot. I hope you can look for it yourself. The following is a review I saw on a book. I'll forward it to you and hope it can inspire you. The author has already said in Chidian that there is only one female lead, Qin Ruoying. In the book, Auntie Zhang said that Qin Ruoying left a message: if you come back and I'm not back, don't look for me, and don't go to my house, because I won't go home. From this, it can be seen that the female lead is not at home, but in a hidden sect. Combined with the female lead's appearance, see Chapter 31. The female lead's pregnancy should have aroused the sect's anger, so the female lead was put under house arrest. In the book, the yellow-dressed girl, Hao Qing, seemed to be kind enough to reveal the news to the female lead, but she had ulterior motives. After that, the female lead pretended to hate the male lead, and her hatred did not diminish, so as to eliminate the sect's malice towards her daughter and her husband. After the yellow-dressed girl, Hao Qing, left, the author deliberately described the words, creak. The door closed again. It also pointed out the deeper meaning of the female lead's house arrest. After the yellow-dressed girl left, the author wrote, there was no longer any anger on her face, only an unspeakable confusion and sorrow. Suddenly, a crystal-clear tear fell from the corner of her eye. The female lead was confused about why the male lead suddenly appeared after disappearing for 5 years, and where he went before that. She was sorrowful because she hadn't seen her daughter for 4 years, and she didn't know if she would recognize herself when she saw her again. The last tear did express her longing for her daughter and husband. This is also the most debated topic in Chidian's book review section. It's about the female lead not being a mother, leaving her daughter behind and running away. Reading civilly, thinking rationally, the female lead's foreshadowing is a bit deep, but the bookworm should be able to see it easily. In my opinion, the interaction between the father and daughter is not as good as Literary Dad. However, the plot is indeed different from Literary Dad. There are too few chapters in this book, so I can't judge the details of the plot. The two books can't be compared, because the style is different. There are many writing techniques, such as flashbacks, interludes, foreshadowing, etc. Maybe I don't have enough strength to write that kind of flavor, but I still hope that you can understand what I want to express. To be honest, I really don't want to write some pretentious face-slapping routine, although I have a deep understanding of this. If you are more attentive, you should be able to notice that there is a difference between the way I wrote the first 40 chapters and the last 40 chapters. I'm changing because I don't have my own style and readership like Okami. I want to keep every reader, so I can only keep trying. I dug a hole for the female lead, and it seemed like everyone was scolding the female lead, to the point where I started to doubt my life. Honestly, I don't think there's anything wrong with the female lead. The big bro above basically pointed out the foreshadowing that I left behind. Although his guess was only 60 to 70% correct, at least he didn't go overboard and make all kinds of random assumptions. He had to be reasonable about everything, and he had to speak his mind. What are you talking about? I'm not scolding you, but I really want to ask you to not be such a straight man. Straight man cancer. Some readers may be too young, so they don't understand the pain and suffering of a woman who is pregnant for 10 months. Pregnancy is a woman's weakest and most helpless time, so they especially need companionship at this time. She disappeared for 5 years. When you were scolding the female lead, did you think about how much she sacrificed? As a mother, she left her own child. Do you think she didn't feel pain? Nian is a piece of meat that fell from her body. Do you really think that Qin Ruoying's character is a 17 or 18-year-old girl? If that was the case, didn't she know to get an abortion when she left? You are all readers, and 10% of you will become my breadwinner in the future, so I can't afford to offend you. I'll do whatever I can to earn money. I'm not stupid, so of course I won't go against money. I've explained the female lead's problem, so it's up to you whether you want to listen or not. This is a serial, so I can adjust the plot at any time. When the time comes, I'll selectively adjust the plot according to the data. In addition, this book is Chidian's first release, so your support outside of Chidian is actually useless to me. Chidian is my boss, of course. As long as you support me, I'll thank you in advance. I'm very happy to see you pirating and scolding each other, so, thank you for your support. I don't dislike pirated readers, so I put up the comments for you to see. I really didn't expect that when most of Chidian's comments section was scolding the female lead, there would be a more fair and objective comment in the pirated comments section. Sigh, this book's reader group, 5117933123. Chapter 77. The evening clouds overflowed with coldness, and the silver moon spun the jade plates silently. The night in this life is not long. Where can I see the bright moon next year? September 23rd. Just after 3:00 in the afternoon, Chin-shi was already waiting at the entrance of the kindergarten. At this time, he suddenly saw a brand new holiday notice posted on the bulletin board outside the kindergarten. After taking a closer look, he realized that it was the Mid-Autumn Festival. Today was August 14th on the lunar calendar, which meant that tomorrow was the Mid-Autumn Festival. Perhaps because he had been wandering outside for too long, Chin-shi never cared about the time after he returned to Earth. 500 years passed in a blink of an eye. For Chin-shi, there was so much time that he began to feel numb. Originally, after a day of adjustment, the little fellow had readapted to the rhythm of the kindergarten. He did not expect that after only one day of class, it would be the Mid-Autumn Festival. A few days after the Mid-Autumn Festival, National Day would come. Holiday syndrome. Chin-shi felt a headache just thinking about it, therefore, he decided to take a few days off, and he had to ask her to follow the schedule of the kindergarten. After reading the holiday notice, Chin-shi came to the wall that he had always liked to stand on. A person and a cat, as usual, looked at the playground of the kindergarten across the wall. However, today, the teacher of the little fellow's class did not seem to arrange for them to play on the playground, so Chin-shi did not see the little fellow for a long time. An hour later. A pleasant bell rang, and school was over. Chin-shi stood in the crowd and lined up. As soon as he approached the school gate, he saw that the little fellow had been led by Teacher Wang to the rest area. Teacher Wang. Chin-shi greeted politely, and Teacher Wang immediately took the little fellow's hand and walked over. A father knows his daughter best. Chin-shi looked down at the little fellow and immediately found that something was wrong with her, so he frowned and asked, Teacher Wang, what's wrong with her? Teacher Wang smiled and did not have time to answer. At this time, the little fellow broke away from Teacher Wang's hand, trotted to Chin-shi's feet, and then hugged his leg tightly. Oh, you've been wronged? Chin-shi rubbed the little girl's head and quickly crouched down to pick her up. The little girl hugged Chin-shi's neck and buried her face deep into Chin-shi's shoulder. Chin-shi gently patted the little girl's back and looked at Mr. Wang. He knew that Teacher Wang would give him a satisfactory explanation. However, Teacher Wang's next words made his expression change slightly. Mr. Chen, Nian just got into a fight with other kids in the classroom. Nian fought with someone? At this moment, Chin-shi's worldview seemed to have been refreshed. In his heart, Nian was the cutest, smartest, most obedient and most sensible child in the world. Moreover, she was still a girl. How could she fight with others? Teacher Wang had seen too many similar expressions on Chin-shi's face, so she immediately explained. She started it first, but we quickly stopped her. Well, this time, Chin-shi was really shocked. Therefore, Chin-shi immediately glanced at the little girl in his arms, reached out, and gently patted her butt. He asked, Nian, is what the teacher said true? However, after Chin-shi asked, the little girl lay in his arms without saying a word. She did not even bother to lift her head. This uncooperative attitude confirmed the teacher's words. However, Chin-shi was not a violent parent, so he immediately asked, Teacher Wang, can you tell me what happened? Of course, this is my duty. Teacher Wang smiled and nodded. Then, she said, today is the last day before the Mid-Autumn Festival, so the school will prepare some mooncakes for the children. In the process of distributing the mooncakes, she suddenly hit the child next to her, and then the two of them started pushing and shoving. After Teacher Lee saw it, she immediately pulled the two of them apart. However, when we asked for the specific reason later, Nian did not say anything. The other only knew how to cry, saying that Nyan hit him. Generally, when this kind of situation happens, we will inform both parents, hoping that the parents will guide the children correctly. After all, children spend the most time with their parents. Children around 4 years old were already exploring ways to interact with others. This process was like a child learning to speak. They would speak the human language with humans and the animal language with animals. Therefore, the correct adult demonstration was very important. When a child knew right and wrong, it was possible to develop the ability to deal with problems and self-control and social conflicts. For children born in a normal environment and upbringing, physical contact and conflicts before the age of 6 were not malicious fights, but to express their emotions at the time. Therefore, when a child used physical contact to express their dissatisfaction, the adult needed to intervene as early as possible to guide them. Although Teacher Wang's words were a little tactful, Qin still understood. Therefore, he could only smile awkwardly. We did not find out the specific reason for the fight, so I hope that you can have a good chat with your child when you get home. Perhaps she was afraid that Qin would indiscriminately hit the child when he got home, so Teacher Wang quickly added, Nyan is a good child. I believe that she must have been wronged, so she impulsively used such an inappropriate way to vent her dissatisfaction. After saying that, Teacher Wang gently touched the back of the little girl's head. Then, she said to the little girl earnestly, Nyan, your father is here. If you have any grievances, you can tell your father, but you must remember that you are not allowed to hit anyone in the future, okay? The little girl did not respond. Qin shook his arm and said in a low voice, Teacher Wang is talking to you. Be good, be polite. The little girl still did not raise her head, but she lay in Qin's arms and reluctantly made a sound, indicating that she heard it. I'm sorry, Teacher Wang. I will talk to her when I get home, it's okay. It's normal for a child to have been wronged. You can have a good chat with her when you get home, but remember, you must not hit her, I know. Thank you, Teacher Wang. Qin nodded and was very grateful to Teacher Wang. Before leaving, the little girl was still hiding in Qin's arms, not even willing to say goodbye to the teacher. Qin had no choice but to carry her on the way home. After walking for a long distance, Qin stopped. He squatted on the ground and slowly put the little girl down from his arms. Then, Qin pinched the little girl's chubby little face and said with a smile, Okay, now can you tell Daddy what happened? Thank you to the owner of The Wind Blows Down for the 10,000 reward. Chapter 78. On the street. The father and daughter stood on the sidewalk and looked at each other. This place was very remote. Even though it was located in Zhonghai, which was one of the top cities in the country, it was still a mixture of urban and rural areas. On one side was an elevator apartment that was under construction, on the other side was an old building that had been built for a long time. After Qin put the little girl down, she faced Qin and took a few steps back, then put her hands behind her back. Seeing this, Qin wanted to pull her into his arms. But at this time, the little girl took a step back, as if she didn't want Qin to hug her. Qin looked at the little girl's expression seriously, but found that her expression was a bit strange. She looked like she had been wronged, but she didn't look like she was going to cry. Instead, she pouted and looked very stubborn. 4-year-old children's language skills were not fully developed, so sometimes they could only vent their emotions by throwing a tantrum, rolling around, crying, and other behaviors. Like parents, like children. Aunt Zhang had set a good example for Nyan, so Qin firmly believed that Nyan would not hit others for no reason. Nyan, good girl, did you feel wronged? Tell Daddy, Daddy will redress your grievances. Qin pulled the little girl again, this time she still wanted to dodge. But if Qin really wanted to grab her, how could she dodge? So she was immediately pulled into Qin's arms. Tell Daddy, okay? Qin scratched her little nose with his hand. At this time, the big cat stood at her feet and meowed at the right time, as if to encourage the little girl. The little girl's long eyelashes fluttered like a fan, then she twisted her body and said quickly, "I want to play with the big cat." Hearing this, she immediately let go of her. Good that she could talk. The little guy held the big cat in his arms and rubbed his little head against the big cat. Then, he put down the big cat and squatted on the ground to stroke its fur. She looked like a child who had been wronged and wanted to hide in the corner and draw circles. She stood by and waited for her for a while. When he felt that she should be almost adjusted, he said gently, "Nyan, we should go home." After that, she bent down slightly and extended his left hand in front of the little fellow. Seeing Chi's outstretched hand, the little guy hesitated for a moment before slowly raising his little hand. His big hand held her small hand. The father and daughter pair walked slowly on the street. The big cat followed them from a distance. When a husky saw the big cat, it immediately rushed over with its tongue sticking out. The big cat ignored it, so the husky snorted and circled around the big cat, huffing and puffing. Maybe it found it a little annoying. The big cat suddenly narrowed its eyes, turned its head and growled at the husky. Meow. The sound was not loud, but in an instant, the husky was so scared that its fur stood on end. It immediately jumped far away and ran faster than it came with its tail between its legs. It did not dare to look back and ran faster than it came. After arriving home, the little fellow seemed to have recovered a lot. Then, she sat directly on the sofa and watched cartoons by herself. She changed his shoes. Seeing that she was so focused on the cartoons, he did not disturb her and walked into the kitchen wearing an apron. She tinkled as she fiddled with pots and pans. Usually at this time, the little fellow would run into the kitchen very clingy, and then be gently pushed out by She with a big smile. She obviously had something on her mind today. As long as humans were conscious, they would naturally have something on their mind. A 2-year-old child would have something on her mind, not to mention Nyan, who was already more than 4 years old. It was not difficult to guess a child's mind. In fact, She had already guessed what was on her mind. It was precisely because of this that She chose to let her be alone. A child who grew up in a normal environment must have been taught by their parents from an early age, don't hit people, don't bully people. This was the first time that Nyan had hit people. It was precisely because she knew that it was wrong to hit people that she had such complicated emotions when she took her home. This was actually a manifestation of not daring to face her own mistakes. She did not regret it, but she definitely felt very wronged. Why was it that others bullied her, but she was the one who was scolded in the end? Even if Teacher Wang did not blame her, she did not blame her either. But at the moment when she hit people, there must be a child with a sense of justice who stood up, shouted that Nyan hit people, and then ran to complain to the teacher. Many parents only paid attention to teaching their children not to hit people and not to bully people. But they did not properly guide their children what bullying was. Nyan felt very wronged. She also felt a little helpless. Others bullied Nyan, and Nyan also hit others. Could it be that he, as a parent, had to come forward and kick the child to the moon? Some things seemed very simple, but when it came to it, it would become very complicated. During the meal, the little fellow was silent. After a few mouthfuls with the spoon, she threw the spoon away and sat on the sofa to continue watching TV. Seeing this, she also put down the chopsticks in his hand, then sat down and gently held her in his arms, and accompanied her to watch cartoons. Zhonghai was a coastal city. The sun rose and set very early. And as the sun continued to set, the room became darker and darker. She got up and was about to turn on the light in the room. At this time, the little fellow noticed his movements and thought that he was going to leave. She immediately pulled Shi's sleeve and said timidly, "Papa, I'm sorry." After saying that, her tears flowed out of her eyes like a dam that had been opened. She sat back on the sofa. He gently held the little fellow in his arms and comforted her. "Good girl, you didn't do anything wrong." Hearing this, she finally couldn't help crying out. She waited for her to cry for a while. When he saw that she slowly calmed down, He gently wiped her tears and asked with a smile, "Do you want Dad to beat him up for you?" The little fellow leaned in Chen-Shi's arms, thought for a while, but still shook her head gently. "No, the teacher said that it's wrong to hit people. It's good that you know." Chen-Shi rubbed the little fellow's hair very happily, then held her to turn on the light in the room. Then, Chen-Shi picked up the bowl and fed her step by step. When she shook her head and said that she was full, Chen-Shi wiped the corners of her mouth, then turned the little fellow's body to let her look at him. "Nian Nian, remember. It's wrong to bully people, so don't bully people in the future. But if someone bullies you in the future, don't be afraid, beat him hard for me. Beat him until he doesn't dare to bully you in the future. Do you remember?" The little fellow looked at Chen-Shi blankly. Her expression was very cute, as if she hadn't come back to her senses. Looking at her cute little face, Chen-Shi couldn't help kissing her face. Night fell. It wasn't August 15th yet, but a full moon was hanging high in the sky. A smile appeared on the little fellow's face again. The father and daughter each occupied a swing, swaying and looking at the moon in the sky. "Nian Nian, we don't cause trouble, but we're not afraid of trouble. This is what Grandma said." "Who is Grandma?" Papa, will Mama go to the moon?" "No." "Why?" "Because Papa has been there." Chapter 79. The next morning. Chen-Shi's phone suddenly rang. It was a text message notification. Not many people knew his phone number, so his phone was idle all day long. Could it be a message from Auntie Zhang? Chen-Shi thought as she picked up her phone. However, when he picked up his phone and read the content, he froze. "Your savings card account ending with 1517 received 100 million. 00 yuan at 10:29 on September 24th. Your current balance is 106,278,486. 00 yuan. 10 million. 100 million? Without thinking, Chen-Shi suddenly understood where the money came from. Therefore, he couldn't help but feel a little emotional. It turned out that money was just a series of numbers for rich people. Sure enough, Chen-Shi didn't wait for long before his phone rang. As soon as he picked up the phone, Ning Zhongguo's hearty laughter came from the other end of the phone. "Mr. Chen, the money. Did you receive it?" "Yeah, I just received it. It's like this. The 10 pills you gave me, I sold them for a very high price through some means. I transferred the extra money to your card. You wouldn't mind me doing this, right?" "Of course not, I already took the money for the pills. Even if you sold them for 1,000 times the price, that's your ability. It has nothing to do with me." "I'm glad you understand." Ning Zhongguo laughed and paused for a second. He then suddenly said, "Today is the Mid-Autumn Festival. It's an old custom in our country to visit relatives and friends during the festival, so I bought some mooncakes and wanted to bring them to you. Do you think it's convenient?" When Chen-Shi heard this, he couldn't help but laugh at Ning Zhongguo's words. The more he interacted with Ning Zhongguo, the more he saw Ning Zhongguo's businessman nature. It was a source of power that had been completely integrated into his blood, driving him to move in a direction that was profitable. In fact, there was no distinction between good and bad in a businessman's nature of seeking profit. There was only a distinction between good and bad methods. For example, the method that Ning Zhongguo was using now, Chen-Shi thought it was a very good method. This also allowed Ning Zhongguo to gain Chen-Shi's approval. Thinking of this, Chen-Shi nodded and said, "Okay, come, I'll wait for you at home." Hearing this, Ning Zhongguo suddenly laughed and said without any awkwardness, "I'm already at the entrance of your neighborhood." Chen-Shi shook his head with a smile. He was truly speechless at old Ning's eagerness. "All right, wait for me. I'll come and get you." After hanging up the phone, Chen-Shi touched the little fellow's head and said, "Daddy will be out for 2 minutes and will be back soon. You just sit here and don't run around, okay?" "Yes." The little fellow was busy watching the wonderful cartoon at 10:30 p.m. She didn't even turn her head. She just nodded and agreed. Chen Shi gave the big cat a look, then walked to the door, changed his shoes, and left. Outside the neighborhood, Ning Zhongguo's car was parked somewhere. He was the only one at the gate, holding 2 exquisite gift bags in each hand. As soon as Chen Shi walked out of the gate, Ning Zhongguo saw Chen Shi's figure and quickly went to greet him. "Mr. Chen, sorry to disturb you. How many times have I told you, you don't have to be so polite?" Hearing this, Ning Zhongguo laughed and said matter-of-factly, "It has nothing to do with being polite. You saved my life, so you're my savior. A drop of water should be repaid with a gushing spring, let alone a life-saving grace. So this is what I should do. Please don't treat me like an outsider." After that, Ning Zhongguo handed the gift bags in his hand to Chen Shi and then introduced, "The one on the left can't be bought outside. I specially went to Hong Kong to find a master to make it. It's a traditional palace craftsmanship. You have to taste it. You have children at home, so the one on the right is prepared for children. The shape is different from ordinary mooncakes. It's cartoon, colorful, and very cute. And it's all natural. There's absolutely no added color. I believe children will like it." Chen Shi took the gift bags and thanked him with a smile. He then invited him to sit at home. However, Ning Zhongguo was a smart person, so he immediately shook his head and said very politely, "I came here specifically to give you mooncakes. I don't have any other intentions, so I won't disturb you. I wish you a happy Mid-Autumn festival." After Ning Zhongguo gave the mooncakes, he waved goodbye to Chen Shi almost without any hesitation. Chen Shi stood at the gate of the community and waited until Ning Zhongguo got into his old S6. Then, he glanced at the van that was parked a few dozen meters away. Sure enough, after Ning Zhongguo got in the car, the van behind immediately started, and then left far behind the A6. This is a bit interesting. Chen Shi held the gift bags and glanced at Ning Zhongguo's A6, then at the van behind it. He couldn't help but smile. Weixing Pharmaceutical Drug Analysis and Inspection Center. A staff member in a white coat came to Su Wei with a report and said, "Mr. Su, this is the composition test report of the pill, please take a look." Su Wei took the report and looked at it. He found that it was full of words, and there were many professional terms that he couldn't understand at all. "I don't understand these things, I only care about the conclusion. Just briefly explain it to me." "Okay, Mr. Su." The staff member nodded, then simply explained in words that Su Wei could understand. "After our detailed analysis and inspection, we learned that this pill is actually a simple Chinese medicine pill. The specific composition test report has been listed in detail. According to the formula, we speculate that this pill can only play the role of nourishing the body and replenishing the qi and blood." Hearing this, Su Wei's expression changed. He snatched the test report from the staff member's hand. After carefully reading the test results below, his expression became somewhat uncertain. The day before yesterday, after buying this pill at a sky-high price of 130 million, Su Wei immediately sent the pill to the Drug Analysis and Inspection Center. After the Drug Analysis and Inspection Center finished the test, Su Wei gave the pill to an old employee who had been suffering from diabetes for a long time. It had only been a day since the old employee had taken the pill. Today, when the staff did a full body examination for him, they found that his fasting blood sugar level was lower than 6.5 millimoles per liter, almost returning to the level of a normal person. In particular, this pill was really as magical as Ning Zhongguo said. Magical medicine. After seeing the power of the pill, Su Wei immediately became a little excited. Ning Zhongguo was in the shipping industry, and he was in the pharmaceutical industry. As long as he got the detailed test report, Su Wei was confident that the laboratory could replicate the exact same pill within a year. Because the comprehensive computer analysis was needed, the detailed test report was not available until now. However, after hearing the conclusion of the staff member, Su Wei subconsciously felt a chill in his heart. He finally believed Ning Zhongguo's words. Ning Zhongguo dared to use his own name as a guarantee. This pill was really something. A hidden master, 100 million for a pill, not expensive. Just as Su Wei was holding the test report and letting his imagination run wild, suddenly, his assistant ran over with the phone in his hand. Its filling was like glutinous rice, soft but not sticky to the teeth. There were also some coconut-like things mixed in it, which was very delicious. To be honest, this thing could not be considered a mooncake at all, but a dessert. In Chen Shi's memory, mooncakes were supposed to be made of egg yolks, red bean paste, 5 kernels, and lotus seed. Although it wasn't as delicious as the one in his mouth, it was more traditional. Perhaps it was because this mooncake was too delicious, the little girl ate 3 pieces in a row, and then collapsed on the sofa. When Chen Shi saw her like this, he knew that there was no need to make lunch today. When she was full, she would naturally start to feel sleepy. The little girl watched cartoons for a while, and unknowingly, she dozed off. Chen Shi didn't want to wake her up, so he didn't carry her back to the bedroom. Instead, he gently covered her with a cold blanket. But just as Chen Shi was covering the little girl with the cold blanket, his phone suddenly rang. Immediately, Chen Shi was startled, and he quickly picked up the phone. The phone call was from Lin Xian. After Chen Shi ran into the bedroom, he said into the phone, "Hello? It's me, Lin Xian." "I know, what's the matter?" It's nothing. I just wanted to ask, do you have any plans for the Mid-Autumn Festival?" Her voice sounded a little hesitant. It was slow, but there was a rare gentleness in it. Chen Shi thought for a moment, but he pretended to answer casually, "It's nothing. I just let her play too much a few days ago, so I'm going to tutor her at home for the next 2 days to adjust her. Otherwise, she'll cry for half a day when she goes to school." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the phone. Then, Lin Xian's voice became a little lighter. "Oh, then it's nothing. I wanted to ask you guys out for an outing. It seems like I can't. Then I'll ask someone else out. That's all. Happy festival. Happy festival." After dinner, the little girl watched cartoons for a while. When the moon rose, Chen Shi took her to the courtyard again. Children couldn't watch too much television, so it was a good choice to take her out to admire the moon. So, the father and daughter sat on the swing like yesterday and admired the moon. Perhaps it was because she was in a good mood today, the little girl chewed on a mooncake while shouting for Chen Shi to tell her a story. Seeing this, Chen Shi told her the story of Chang Yi flying to the moon. There were many stories about Chang Yi, but the most popular one was that Chang Yi was forced to swallow a medicine and became an immortal. She was trapped in the moon palace. According to the legend, when the descendant shot down the sun, the Queen Mother of the West gave him a medicine of immortality. The descendant gave the medicine to Chang Yi for safekeeping. One day, the descendant's disciple, Feng Meng, took advantage of the descendant's absence and forced Chang Yi to hand over the medicine of immortality. Chang Yi refused, and Feng Meng threatened her life. In desperation, Chang Yi had no choice but to swallow the medicine of immortality. The medicine of immortality was an immortal medicine, so Chang Yi immediately became an immortal. She floated off the ground and flew towards the sky. This medicine was originally given to the descendant by the Queen Mother of the West. Although Chang Yi became an immortal after eating the medicine of immortality, she couldn't be listed as an immortal. So she could only be trapped in the cold moon palace, never to see the descendant again. The little girl was young, but she seemed to understand the pain of yearning between a man and a woman. After hearing Chen Shi's story, her little face scrunched up, and she kept muttering to herself, "Big sister Chang Yi is so pitiful." Seeing this, Chen Shi could only gently rub her little head. Actually, there was another version of the story of Chang Yi flying to the moon. That was the version of Chang Yi abandoning her husband and swallowing everything for herself. Because Chang Yi didn't know that this medicine was only effective for the descendant, after swallowing it, she discovered that she was forever trapped in the moon palace. This was also a punishment given to her by the Queen Mother of the West. Of course, this version of the legend was a bit dark, so Chenxi didn't tell the little girl. The father and daughter pair swayed leisurely on the swing and admired the moon. Meanwhile, in the distance, in a small courtyard, a white-robed woman walked out of the pavilion and looked up at the full moon in the sky. She was dressed in a pure white dress, and under the bright moonlight, she was like a piece of white jade, shining brightly. The moonlight was like water, but it was also bone-chilling. Who could understand Chang's suffering? 10 frosty shadows turned the courtyard tree, this evening bound people to a corner. Not necessarily, Chang'e was without sorrow and hatred, the jade toad was cold and the osmanthus was lonely. Asterisk 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 chapter 76. Someone asked the use of the poem at the beginning, saying, I am water. Now, let me explain. That poem corresponds to this one. Both poems are called Mid-Autumn Moon. One is by Su Shi, and the other is by Yan Shu. Both poems have metaphors. Putting aside the metaphors, these two poems perfectly fit the theme of this book. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.